several decades after that of survey work. And he wrote some papers later too, and he, later in time when he even had more experience with that whole thing. But he felt our walls were not farmers' walls. And he looked at old boundaries, historical boundaries and stuff. A couple walls do line up, but most of the walls do not line up with historical boundaries, which,
even just bringing up once again, the LiDAR data on screen and looking at those red outlines, good Lord, no surveyor in his... You had one heck of a drunk surveyor. If that's the dude that was, and even back then, folks, I'm even talking the 1700s. Surveying was pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, it was.
Surveying, even going back to the time of plumb lines and the Egyptians, was pretty
right.
accurate.
Oh yeah.
So to know that would be like, good Lord, I would never want to mitigate that property dispute. If those were property lines on that map, on that LiDAR map, I wouldn't want to touch that with a 10-meter cattle prod, man. Like, are you joking right now?
You brought up a great point, because Jonathan Patty, the one that a lot of people gave credit for building the entire complex and the 110 acres of walls and all of that, he actually not only was a shoemaker, but he actually did a survey on some of the town roads. So he knew how to survey too. He would have made straight lines, I think, when he built had his walls built or built them himself and surveyed them first, and he was a tax collector.
Tendency for any human brain.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But when you walk our walls, you'll see these walls. They have big radius turns. Sometimes they're short turns, and they just and there's a bow tie shaped wall too. I don't know if that shows up on one of the LiDAR images you have. It looks like a big bow tie, and actually it's partly astronomically aligned. And there's no purpose for that wall, and it's beautifully built. It has nice straight ends on it. And it serves no purpose. It's not a field clearing. Like in New England, when you plow a field, you take the rocks out and you either make stone walls or you make a pile. You get rid of them because you don't want to hit them with your plow the next time, And every spring, the rocks come up because of frost, and you grow a new crop of rocks every year. Hopefully the crops come up as good as the rocks come up, But when you're up on this part of the area, the bedrock is exposed, and the soil, where there's soil only a few inches deep, we check for plow marks all over that hill. Yeah. We found one plow mark, and we think it's where they set a plow down. So the area was not cultivated up there. The whole hilltop was not. It's all rock. The soil is not arable for growing crops. It's not very good soil. I had the University of New Hampshire Forest Extension Service up several times. Phil Ozier came up, and he says, your trees are anemic. They're much older than they appear. They don't grow much because the soil's so poor here,
Yeah.
And the last guy we got in from there in 2018, it was a new guy, and he goes, this place. He said the same thing, and he also said this is a good candidate for a forest management program and to clear out your alignments and to make the forest healthier and get forestry people in here to take out the trees. So so it's not a place where people were cultivating the land and growing crops up there. That's not why these walls were built. Some people suggested that, but that's
precisely. That would, of course, be a suggestion. People live there. You're going to grow crops here. You're going to grow crops there. But once again, this is really more a common spot in between the two home ranges of the local natives.
Yeah, I think so. And it's on a hill too, which is usually a sacred kind of thing. And I think the 15 acres that you see with the LiDAR is also the 15 acres that we did with the that has a serpentine wall that wraps around 2,550 feet. And again, serpent can be protection too. So maybe that wall, and it does undulate in many places, and it is, we think it is a serpent's body. It might be protecting that 15 acres, saying this is a sacred area here. Outside is an unsacred area, But in here, it's holy or sacred or whatever. And it's on a hill too, like a lot of ancient, either you build a pyramid, put it on top, or you build your religious sites up high, closer to heaven,
Sure.
A lot of cultures did that. And that's what and a lot of the sites in New England are like that. They're on near the top of the hill, usually just offset from the top of the hill, like our site. It's just
it perfectly makes sense. And once again, I've got to download this image off Facebook tonight before I forget. The one that our mutual friend Mark Eddy sent, and I'll send it to you because it's a fantastic image that I think really illustrates that degree rise in the terrain to the sunrise rock that you're talking about, which of course, if you were having a place of worship anything like that where there's some kind of sacred alignment happening that you want to observe, you would want that to be elevated above you so that, hey, short people down front, tall people in the back, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
we have that problem.
You would want to make that as commonly available to everybody as possible. So if you make that event happening slightly above head level, it's going to be a whole lot easier for everybody in the crowd to see that sacred moment than to be like, consarn it, John was in my way again this year. I guess my crop's just going to rot in the field. Thanks, John. You know.
Yeah, the grade works for that, particularly in the summer solstice, very nicely, you know, because you do get the biggest crowd in the summertime too, you know, and heads in the way, you know, get down in front, you know, but it works pretty good on that one because of the slope of the land there, you know. So
precisely.
that's another good point.
If you keep everybody back behind marker B, everyone should have a decent, even view of the whole event.
You know, even at Stonehenge, you know, they get, because this year they didn't let people in again, although some people did get in there. But yeah, you know, there's only a certain amount of space you can actually witness that when, or you know, you got heads in the way and people in the way and all of that stuff. So it might have been more like the high priest, you know, or priestess or whatever watching this with the other higher ups next to them. And then the more common people behind them still trying to watch the event, I'm sure, you know, you know, so
different than I'm Roman Catholic. No different than if when you walk into a Jewish temple, when you walk into a Roman Catholic church, there is the common floor and then a stairway that leads to the altar, and then typically another stairway that leads to what would be the Holy of Holies or the tabernacle.
Right.
You know?
I was Episcopalian. We had that. My wife was Catholic, and I've been, you know, so I know what you're talking about. Exactly.
It's definitely putting that sacred moment at an elevated space consciously for everybody at that moment.
So those days of the year would have been very, very holy. You know, people would have probably had a pilgrimage to the place, I think.
Absolutely.
Offerings, pilgrim. And if there was a death, you know, that might have been another special kind of thing up there, you know, another special thing that took place with people too. Well, with 57 alignments, they were probably, because some of them took place like the lunar ones, you know, they only take place every 9 years for the minors and then 9 more years for the majors. But the other ones during the course of the year, you know, they would have had at least eight different solar alignments, you know, with the sun rising and set for the cross quarter and quarter days, you know, and then the star alignments. Dr. Winkler from Penn State began working on the 24 star alignments we have back in 1997. And he retired, I think, in 1999 after over 35 years at Penn State as an astronomer, an archeoastronomer. And he found, just before he died in 2001, unfortunately, he died suddenly. He was just wrapping that up. And so I have all his papers on like Taurus and Aldebaran and all Ceres and all the different star alignments that we have at our site. Well, he believes the site was built over 3 stages too, sort of like Stonehenge, but from 4,000 years ago up to about 1600 AD.
Yeah, kind of. And once again, if you look at those, and I've got the map up again with all the alignments going back to the center. If you look at those, it definitely shows a procession. Be it over time. I mean, we've got you for about another 8-9 minutes before we
it went by fast.
to L.A. Marzulli. Good times always go by fast, my friend.
They do.
And now, one question that I would have is, was this site possibly frequented by more than one local tribe?
Boy, that's a wonderful question. You know, we don't have an answer for that yet. But these sites are all over the Northeast. There's 800 of them. And it's possible people came from a distance to the site, particularly we mentioned some of the astronomical events, you know. Because of the site is a little different than the other new 800 sites, because again, it's like the Reader's Digest version. It's kind of special in that way. You know, everything all over the place here concentrated on about 110 acres, you know. But I think people did come from distances. And, you know, the question is, who are these people? And was it generational? Was it a layering of different cultures that used the site? We're still not sure about that. So for the audience, we don't have all the answers. You know, it's still an open question. We don't have conclusive evidence of who these people were, where they came from, or what happened to them. We just don't know. And then Native American involvement. They were here for 10,000 years. I can only imagine they were involved with it to some degree, or either 100% or less than. We just don't know,
Well, and
there is evidence of old world coming to the new world too,
sure.
Before Columbus. So that's the thing we look at too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's that,
Yeah.
and we could spend a whole episode on the hypothesis of this being Templar connected.
You'd want to talk to Scott Walters about that too.
I will write that down.
Yeah, Scott's great. He was out here. He was out here a month ago. He drove all the way up from Minnie, and he was out visiting my wife and myself. And he comes out every year or every 6 months, but he's really more the expert of that whole. But I'm interested in it.
That's just it, though. If the local culture goes back 10,000 years, and structures like this are found up and down the East Coast, ranging from Nova Scotia all the way down. Quite literally, or at least down to the Carolinas, a little bit further than that, correct?
Right. I was just in South Carolina 2 months ago at my sister. I found some writings inside of a museum that was 1761 date and also 1571.
Yes.
And around all they talked about in those two pictures, it was a wonderful museum. The only thing they talked about in those two pictures, they didn't actually have the two rocks there, were those two historic dates, but there was letters on it. And my brother-in-law was with me. He goes, I think those are Greek. I said, those are Phoenician letters, because the Greek comes from the Phoenician, the Hebrew. I said, they don't even address it. And that's on two different pictures, two different stones in some counties right around.
Wow.
It's in the northern part of South Carolina.
Well,
they don't talk about those other letters at all. It's amazing.
With things like that, and especially like we were just saying, the native cultures, the way that they commingled, known trade between the tribes of Nova Scotia, the Carolinas, Massachusetts really would be almost a midway point.
Yeah, exactly. I think tribes
geographically, it would be almost a midway point. So if you were, that would be a trek of treks back in the day.
Yeah,
but known to happen. Known trading happened between the Algonquins up in Maine and the Indians down in Massachusetts. Same thing with the local Indians up in Nova Scotia and Massachusetts, stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So, if you were making that trek from perhaps the Carolinas to Nova Scotia, hey man, it may behoove you to stop midway and not only get a bearing, but maybe get an idea what part of the season you're in real quick.
Well, that's a good point. There are two Native American trails. They have a map of New Hampshire Native American trails, and one on the west side of us, very close to our site, is called the Pawtucket Native American or Indian Trail. They call it on the map. And on the other side of us, the Pentucket, and they're on both sides of us. And those trails just go off into throughout New Hampshire. They continue towards Maine, Canada, and then they head south into Massachusetts and beyond.
Yeah,
so I think you're kind of on the right way.
Well, precisely. It's one of those. Hey, even if you were late to the trade, and I'm just looking at this from a point of view of American history. Back in our Wild West days, we had like those pioneer camp days, where if you were a buffalo trader, hey man, you had 3 days to bring your stuff to the camp,
right?
And
that's
you
what
brought
happened
all
up here
your
too.
kill and everything else. Well, the problem is, what happens if you were halfway there? But man, by the time you would get there, it would be over. Is it time for you to turn back?
Right.
Have you kept track of that?
Exactly,
Having this little marker as a midway point and all these alignments may be a perfect way for any decent star navigator to be like, hey man, we're about 1 week too late. We need to go ahead and head back.
Right. Because of the astronomy, they would know it. Exactly. Right. Yeah, we screwed up.
So,
next year.
That's just one thought form to think about. But that seems to me to be a very, especially if these people worked together, shared knowledge, shared anything in that, right?
Well, we have a stone. We have a stone in our artifact display that our archaeologists identified because of her husband too. The geologist, that came from New York, so it was imported. So I think you're on the right track. People were bringing in, stone things that even implements and different types of stone, from different parts of the Northeast to trade. Wow. And that came from, if you drove, it's about 5 hours west here in a car, where it came from.
Well, so. Yeah, and precisely. I mean, now take that 5 hours and do it on a horse.
Yeah, or on
5 hours and be dragging a hand sled with goods behind you.
Yeah, I mean, or walking it, and it would have been a long way.
Exactly, it would have been a major undertaking. So to have a waypoint in the middle, no different than a Stuckey's.
And we have the Mohawk Trail in Massachusetts. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole network of ancient roads. Plus, they use the water too, the rivers and stuff for transportation.
Could you just imagine if you were if your property was a Stonehenge Stuckey's? Just that.
That's another show. I think we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
Well, I'm going to leave you with that thought. Thank you so much once again for coming on with such short notice with the solstice just happening. Like, I know you were up for close to 24 hours the other day with it being Father's Day, the alignment, everything.
A lot going on.
With. So, happy Father's Day to you.
Happy Father's Day to everybody, and you too.
Absolutely. Before we let you go real quick, time for shameless self-promotion. Tell everybody where they can go to check everything out, Dennis.
Sure. They can go to our website, stonehengeusa.com. There's the email address there. There's a phone number. We also have on there a free app download. You can do a complete virtual tour of our site. It doesn't cost you anything, but you can do it from home. And if you come to our site, you can use that and walk around. It will talk to you. It has pictures and text. And we have a 12-minute video on our website, too. And we're on Facebook and Instagram, too. So, but we're open every day but Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we snowshoe in the winter, so we're here year-round pretty much. So, but thank you so much for having me on again. I totally enjoyed it.
Oh, absolutely. It was more than a pleasure. We actively have L.A. Marzulli on with us right now. How are you doing, L.A.?
I'm doing really good, and it's always great to hear Dennis's voice. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, L.A., nice to hear your voice, too.
Absolutely.
What a surprise.
I figured I would let you two guys chat. It would be a perfect way to test the tech and make sure.
Well, we got to talk anyway, so thank you so much. Nice to hear from you, L.A.
Yeah, likewise. Always good.
Yeah.
Well, L.A., thank you so much once again, Dennis. We will get back to you very, very soon.
No, thank you. Thank you, and have a great evening. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye. So, L.A., how have you been doing since our last visit, good sir?
Let me ask you something. Is this just audio, or is it...
audio only.
Just audio only. Okay, I'll turn up my camera.
That will give us some better bandwidth. That's always helpful.
Yeah, we just released a film. It's called Disclosure, The Coming Great Deception and the Luciferian Endgame. We just released it. We got about 82,000 views on our YouTube channel, and then other sites have picked it up. I know that Prophecy Watchers, I think, has about 60,000 hits on it. So, I mean, it's making the rounds, but it's amazing. People are always chomping at the bit. Why don't you release this stuff for free, LA, blah, blah, blah. So we do, and the response is less than overwhelming. What can I tell you? But the reason why I made it for free, this is just too important. The information in that is just too important to charge for. So we're actually working on part 2, and hopefully we'll have that released in the fall sometime.
Well, I am excited. Like I told our mutual friend Michelle the other day, and it was just a random phone call between us. I think you had just been this last weekend on Coast to Coast AM talking about the same film, correct?
Correct. It was not it was a week ago yesterday.
Yeah.
A week ago was correct.
Exactly. And I'd seen it on social media, and I was like, my God, I got to go find this. And of course, the first place I went was to our videos page, because you kindly allowed us to embed your L.A. Marzulli channel on our page. So I went there, and it was absolutely phenomenal. The information that you give in that is great. Now, before we get into a clip real quick, just kind of the beginning of it, was this something that you already had in the works?
What happened was, Richard Shaw and I did 11 films together in the Watchers series. Mm-hmm. And what's amazing, Watchers 7, a lot of what we covered there is now coming out in the mainstream media.
Yes, it is.
For instance, Robert Salas, who was at the Maelstrom Air Force Base, actually Maelstrom Intercontinental Ballistic Base. He had 10 missiles that went online when a UFO appeared over his command post. He was like 60 feet underground when this happened. And, he appears in our film, and we were the first production company that he actually went with. He had been offered all sorts of deals and didn't do it because they wouldn't give him editing rights. So we said, come on in. We'll show you the rough cut. If you want to change something, no worries. So we did. He didn't change anything, and that was the end of it. We were the first production company to actually interview him, and he was very emotional. He was very emotional.
That's beautiful, man.
Very, very emotional. So this is back Watchers 7. I mean, it's almost like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, it's old stuff. So Richard and I parted companies after 11 films. He wanted to get in the Torah codes and Raiders of the Lost Ark. He was actually looking for the Ark of the Covenant, literally. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, and spending time in Israel. And I was on the trail of a Nephilim, which led to basically I've done 9 films on my own. Yeah. The first film I did on my own after Richard and I parted company, and by the way, his anniversary was just a couple of days ago, which is very, very bizarre. So, yes, it's been 2 years since he passed away. Very untimely. Great friend. I miss him a lot. And he taught me everything I know about filmmaking. So I owe, a lot to Richard Shaw, the director of The Watchers.
Yeah.
But so I did this UFO film. It was my first film. I had a lot of footage, and it was my first time editing a feature film. It's like an hour and 37 minutes long. And there's just way too much information, and some of the people just drone on forever. So I kind of wanted to get back and re-edit it, because I've done 9 films now, and I've gotten better. I'm not patting myself on the back, but hopefully I've gotten better. And people who watch the first one and the 9th one go, yeah, you've gotten better. So, I mean, okay, I get that. There's always room for improvement. And as within any art, we learn every day, and we're always honing our craft. Always honing our craft.
Absolutely.
That's part of what we do. So I started to circle back on this thing for 2 reasons. The first and the most important was disclosure was happening. We get this in 2017, where Commander David Fravor on the Tucker Carlson show looks right at the camera. Tucker asks him a question: where do you think this tic-tac-shaped object was from? Tic-tac-shaped UFO was from, and he said, wherever it was from, it was not from this Earth. Well, that's earth-shattering news. Hello, from Commander David Fravor, former F-18 pilot, who encountered a tic-tac-shaped UFO over the Pacific Ocean near San Diego. So that was like the nexus. I went, oh my gosh, this is really happening. But that's 17. Now it's 21. And I kept doing On the Trail of a Nephilim. Meanwhile, I had all these other interviews I had done which is going to become part 2 of the whole UFO thing. So I said, I'm going to go back and redo this and release it for free. And actually, the impetus of that was my good friend, Dr. Mark Kahn. And Mark was saying, LA, why don't you just release the film for free and see what it does? I go, Mark, great idea.
Yeah.
So that was it. And I got back and looked at the film and began the editing process, the re-editing process, which took, people have no idea the amount of work that goes into these things. They just have no clue.
Oh, yeah.
And it was I would say it's 2 months worth of work, steady work every day.
Yep.
Steady work. Before it was, and there's a lot of new music, a lot of new footage, and we're actually working on part 2. And I'll be honest with you, I'm overwhelmed because there's so much information in part 2. I almost have brain freeze. It's like, how do I edit this thing?
Well, there's so much information in part 1. And before we go any deeper with any hypotheses that you may have with the disclosure coming up on the 25th, which I definitely want to get into, my friend, like your brain and your mind on these things is so sharp.
Thank you.
And I think you have a totally different concept than what a lot of people out there right now, that, like I've been saying on our group and on this show for smooth since they've said there will be a report coming out, is don't swallow the lure. Watch the lure, enjoy the show, enjoy watching other people bite. But man, don't bite and go under the boat, dude, because it may not be what you think. And before we get into that real quick, LA, I do want to play the intro, the first minute of UFO Disclosure, The Great Coming Deception, and Luciferian Endgame, because I really think nobody can sum this up better than you in this 1 minute of video.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
UFO Disclosure, The Coming Great Deception, and the Luciferian Endgame. I shot the footage in 2016, and we edited it and released the film in 2017. Of December of that year, 2017, on Tucker Carlson's show, he had a guest on, Commander David Fravor, who was a former F-18 fighter pilot. Fravor had an encounter over the Pacific Ocean with a tic-tac-shaped UFO. Tucker asked Commander David Fravor, in your own words, what do you think this was? Fravor looked right at the camera and said, whatever this was not of this earth. One. That's a groundbreaking statement. We've never heard anything like that before, especially on the mainstream media, as it were. Since then, our government has stated on the record that UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena, are real. Folks, what are we to make of this? The reason I circled back and re-edited this film is I believe that disclosure is now being rolled out. We see it month after month after month. The purpose of this film is to arm you with what I believe is the truth, that these are not extraterrestrials from some other galaxy. They are, in fact, interdimensional entities that are messengers of deception. As you know, this film is for free. All I would ask is that you pass it forward. Share it with your loved ones, family members, your pastor. We are told, we are warned, in ancient prophetic texts, that men would faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth, that the dragon would come with all signs and lying wonders, that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. What are we to make of those statements? They are dire warnings from thousands of years ago. I truly believe we are in a window of time that is unprecedented, unlike any other time in history. We are being told by our government that the UFO or UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, is actually real, that we have in our possession off-world vehicles. In my opinion, when they really show up, when there's full disclosure, everything will change. However, these are not extraterrestrials from some faraway galaxy. They are, in my opinion, interdimensional entities that have a nefarious agenda. They are messengers of deception and masters of deceit. They lie and do so habitually. And I would ask you, who is the father of lies? In this film, you will see what I believe is incontrovertible evidence that the phenomenon is not only real, but it has a very dark side, a very nefarious agenda, which is why we call it the coming great deception and the Luciferian endgame.
And once again, the amazing words of L.A. Marzulli himself. I mean, that's why I had to play that, because I don't think anybody put it as well. I've been trying to herald on my show as much as possible. Once again, don't swallow the lure. Don't go under the boat, little fishies. Is this saying that there is a technology that we are in possession of that goes beyond all else? Absolutely. But does that mean that it's aliens? No. I almost fall into the Project Bluebeam camp, which is where a lot of people forget that, and this isn't like a declassified government document. This is actually somebody's thought form that came out years ago, but is an interesting thought form where there will be a mass hallucination by people, and those who are religious believers, it will be the second coming. And those who are not, it will be from out of this world. And the technology exists for us to project laser holograms. Like we got into that 2 weeks ago with Mike Turber, with, you know, all of the like literal pods that are carried by airplanes to project plasma holograms to deflect missiles like chaff. You know, things that are fully visible. So, interesting concept that, and whenever I saw your video, it was like, my Lord, there's somebody else who is finally heralding the fact that, hey, maybe we need to pay attention because there might be something a little unfriendly going on, kind of hijacking the meme of society, so to speak.
Well, first of all, thanks so much for, you know, your kind words in regard to that monologue. That was unscripted. There was nothing written.
Said.
That was from the heart, and you know, I've been doing this for decades. So yeah. it's my core. It's who I am. It's what I live with. It's what I walk in. And I've been warning about this literally for decades, warning about it. And you can go back and read my books. The first one, which was published by Zondervan, which was 1999. But we started researching that in the 80s, and then it finally a novel, which was the first of a Nephilim trilogy. And in that book, the protagonist is called Johanan.
Yeah.
And Johanan basically comes up with that phrase, the coming great deception. That's where it first appeared, at least the first time I used it. Somebody else may have used it before them. I don't know. But that's where I used it in that very first book, 1999, when it was published. So I mean, again, this is my core. This is who I am, what I study, what I've been into, literally for decades. Yeah. You're right. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Don't bite the lure. I think we're going to look when the government finally comes out. We're going to see the Texas two-step. We'll have just enough information to keep people on the hook, as it were. But really not anything new. You'll notice that they run the same story over and over and over again, which is the tic-tac-shaped UFO seen by Commander David Fravor. They also run the Robert Salas, which I just talked about a little earlier, with the missile silos and all that. We broke that story years ago. Yeah. It's old news, and yet now it's getting all this traction on all the like it was in the Sun and just all over the place, you know.
Yep.
So they're rolling it out. It's a managed agenda.
Absolutely.
To see what people's reactions will be, and basically it's flatline. I mean, people are so ambivalent, either ambivalent or just asleep, and they really don't give a flip. I don't know which it is. I'm taken aback by it because you know, this is life changing, folks. When they show up, and you know, you talked about Project Bluebeam, and I know that Stephen Greer is big on that and has been banging that drum forever.
Years.
Well, years. I get that, Steve, and that might be part of it. The problem I have is in Greer's world, as far as I know, and I've never sat down with them. It's a very truncated view. He doesn't bring to bear a bunch of different aspects, several different aspects of the phenomena, which are people are taken, sperm is taken from the men, ovum is taken from the women. When women they find themselves pregnant, they're reabducted, usually at the end of the first trimester, and they think they've miscarried, but they're troubled. Sure enough, 4 or 5 years later, they're reabducted, and they're presented with an alien human-looking hybrid that looks very sickly. Now, this is in the 90s. It's gotten way better than that for them. So the hybrid now can pass as human. Dr. David Jacobs' book, Walking Amongst Us, the last book before his untimely, not demise, but he's not doing well. Let's put it that way. Decline, better word. And that was his last book, and I completely concur. They are walking amongst us. They are here. We show this in the film where Al Matthews has an encounter with a woman who can only be described as a hybrid entity. This is ongoing. So you've got hybrids, then you've got the implants. I remember when I first started talking about it, I was laughed at by other people, other researchers. There's no such thing. Well, we show this in the film in our Watcher series where we actually trace Dr. Roger Lear's protocol with a man who has been implanted, who thinks he's been implanted, X-rays, CAT scans, Gauss meter, the whole 9 yards. And we finally go to Dr. Matriciana's and do an ultrasound, and we wind up taking the implant out. That's all in Watchers 8, once again with the late and great friend of mine, Richard Shaw, the director and co-producer of the Watchers series. But it's on film. We're the only Christian team that's ever done anything close to that. And Dr. Roger Lear took out 17 of them. Interestingly enough, there's a film on Netflix called Patient Number 17.
Yep.
We paid for the opera. We paid for everything.
Wow.
And the producer of that film took our footage. Richard gave it to him. He was supposed to give us credit, never did, and the rest is history. So his film gets on Netflix. Of course, our film isn't. There is a bias. There's a prejudice.
Absolutely.
Anybody who has a Christian worldview is ostracized
Yes.
in academia and the scientific community on certain platforms, and on it goes. But somehow I'm the fascist. I'm the racist. I'm all the things that they actually are. It's unbelievable.
Well, and with that downcasting in mind, because it is such a horrible fact. So, and I mean, even people that are researching things like you are into the skeletons hidden by the Smithsonian, into the Paracas skulls, things like that. The poo-poo of that kind of research by mainstream archaeology and science is insane. Like, to the point of religious zealots defending themselves insane. Where it's like, hey, and I make the point in our group all the time on Facebook, where it's like, if there's a 10% deviation in something, you really need to pull and start researching that 10%. Like, if there was a 10% failure in the brake lines of a vehicle, I bet you'd see a recall. You know what I mean? So it's like, if you're talking about crop circles where 10% of them are not fake, known not to be fake, have crazy nodes, have generations of crops affected in that area. The Paracas skulls, where maybe 70-80% of them might be deformed by false means, but the other percentage of them have totally different, like, sagittal sutures and the way that the skull grows, and just this idea of almost religious zealousness when it comes to somebody challenging the thought form. And,
well, interestingly enough, Chief Joseph Riverwind, who's been on our Trail of a Nephilim series, I think he's in 2, 3, and 4, or 1, 2, and 3, whatever. But Chief is a good friend. We've been on Trail adventures together and wound up in all sorts of strange places. But he sent me an article by Chief, by this Ohio mound group talking about the Serpent Mound. And Chief Wallace was going on and on and on about how the Serpent Mound is Shawnee and all this stuff. Well, in the film, this is years ago, several years ago now, Chief Wallace, we have a quote from her saying that the Shawnee did not build the Serpent Mound, but always took care of it. So now everything is flipped, what's going on there, and the Chief and I are going to try to get to the bottom of why this article is what it is. So once again, it's a managed agenda. Anybody who talks about aliens or anything else, is completely sidetracked. And here's the deal, and I want us to stay on course with the film disclosure, but real quickly, it's like we're led to, and I show this in episodes 1, 2, and 3 of On the Trail of a Nephilim, the mysterious mound builders, mathematical mysteries of the mound builders. So let's just go to one place. We'll go to the Octagon Mound. It's in Ohio. It's part of the greatest earthworks on the planet called the Newark Earthworks, all right? The Octagon Mound encompasses about 50 acres of land. So it's not this little octagon mound. It's huge. It's 50 acres. In fact, a person can really only see it when he's way up in the air. All right? So right off there, we've got some problems. But then the octagon isn't an eight sides that are equal. It's an irregular octagon. Two sides are unequal. Okay? So now you've got complex geometry. Yeah. I sat down with the mathematician Dorothy Isley, and she is it appears in the film. And basically, you know, in order to do something like this on paper, you need to know geometry. You need to be able to measure angles. You need to use a compass, a square, and a ruler. And without those three implements, good luck. Good luck. You're not going to do it because the angles have to be precise, which is where your compass and your ruler and all these different things, and you have to know geometry. So here we've got, and you know, you can do that on a piece of paper, and I get that. But even then, you still have to have those implements, and you have to know geometry. Otherwise, you wind up with a mess. You just can't draw it out. You need to know geometry, and you need to know the angles that make up an octagon, and then you need to know the irregular. You need to know all this. So it's one thing to draw it on paper, which is, by the way, no easy task. I challenge your audience to take a paper and a pencil and a ruler and just draw an octagon. Yeah. 8 equal sides. Good luck with that.
Try just drawing a circle with that 8 of a string and an anchor point.
Bingo. It's typical. So here's the deal. We are looking at advanced geometry encompassing 50 acres of land, and it's totally right on, and it corresponds to the 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Native Americans did not have either of those particular disciplines in their teepees. They didn't have it. It's not there. It didn't exist. They didn't know about the 18-and-a-half-year cycle, and they didn't know geometry. End of story. So and I'm saying all that because there's an agenda, and anybody who goes against it and goes, wait a minute, show me where Native Americans had this. Yes. Oh, they just forgot the geometry. Oh, really?
Yeah, I doubt 10,000 years of spoken history, that's what they forgot.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
And I've actually got the map of Newark Earthworks from Ohio up right now. And right down the road from that same octagon that you're talking about is literally a perfect parallelogram.
Yeah, it's you know, the octagon mound is just, you know, I've been there several times. Obviously, we filmed there. It's just incredible. And when you're in it, you don't know what you're looking at. You really don't know.
We've got you for about another 30 minutes, and it's interesting to me literally the case that you quoted a minute ago, because I pulled 2 clips today after watching your documentary twice. I went back and I screenshotted 2 clips. Number 1 was the intro, because like I said, I don't think anybody could lay out that thought form in that way in a minute. Like literally, I've got it. It's like 1 minute and 20 seconds. It's beautifully said, L.A. But in addition to that, after watching it the second time, I was like, out of everything, which clip would L.A. want to play? And I pulled the exact one that you're talking about. So I literally want to play that because there's a part that this testimonial brings about that I'm talking about, where that connection between religious and UFO is made, and kind of that handshake happens. And I think that's kind of the thought form that a lot of people have not really considered about what is going on right now, about something that we talk about with Dr. John Hall with all the time, a beautiful means of control, a means of control that is already inlaid, already there. All you're doing is taking advantage of it. So I want to play that clip real quick.
Go for it.
And it had to do with this woman who basically changed her appearance right in front of you. Tell us about that.
That was mind-blowing. That was in 2008, September. I'll always remember that. I was working for Williams Moving and Storage for their overseas division. We had a container coming in from Kuwait. The lady's name was Diane Kelly. I met her with one of my employees. I brought him along to give a hand. He had heard all my stories. And he didn't diss me. He said, you know, I've heard strange stuff like this. My parents know about it. He didn't make fun of me or anything like that. And anyway, we met this woman. She showed up in her car. I said, hi, I'm Al. This is so-and-so. We're here to unload your container. Welcome to Canada. Shook her hand. And I noticed she was a very pretty lady, well-dressed. She was wearing the weirdest glasses I've ever seen in my life. They were just, like, off the charts. I'm like...
How so? What do they look like?
They were black and wrapped around. Okay. So it would cover the side of her eyes so no sun would get in. Okay. So I sort of figured, oh, maybe she has an eye problem or something.
Sure.
But anyway, we moved on from there. The conversation went this way. I said, for some reason, it was September, the rainy season's coming in Vancouver, and I was just making simple conversation. I said, why are you moving from Kuwait? It's so nice over there now. The war's over, and, you know, you're coming back here. And she goes, she changed totally. She goes, there's going to be another war, another war. And for some reason I said, well, don't you believe in a higher power? I don't know why I said that, but that's what I said. And she looked at me and she goes, what do you mean, Al? UFOs? And I'm like, what?
So out of the blue, she just
said that.
That's the clip right there. That when and like I said, I watched this documentary twice today. After everything was confirmed between us with Michelle and everything else, and she sent me the link to everything. I was like, thank God I get to watch all of it. And man, such an incredible outlay, LA. And once again, this is just this gentleman's testimony, but to have somebody saying that is what an entity told them, was that there would be a link between that and religion. That is the bridge that would be built.
Yeah, I mean, it gets better as the film progresses.
For
absolutely. For me, the one that just blew me away was this woman who remains anonymous. We pixelated her face. I spoke to her a couple of weekends ago, and actually prayed with her over the phone. She is a psychic, New Age philosophy. She was out looking for all sorts of stuff, and she was out in a tent by herself, camping. In the middle of the night, she wakes up in the tent, is like this engulfed in this huge wind. She goes out, and there's a giant UFO directly over the tent, probably about 60 feet in the air. You know, and this thing's probably about 80 feet wide, something like that. And she's directly underneath it, and it's lighting up the whole area. And she's by herself. And next thing you know, she wakes up in the morning in the tent. She's got missing time, obviously. There are 2 puncture marks in her neck, and she has a cough.
Yeah.
And this happened to her in 2004, and she told me the story in 2016. And when she told me that, I just went, well, there's no way I can use this. I'm thinking to myself, I mean, this is really way too far out. And I just, it's great. I'm glad she believes this, but I can't use it. So in redoing the film, I'm previewing different clips.
Wow.
And and I play the first one. And I say, well, I'll use that with Billy Crone's testimony. That will be perfect. So I do a little clip, maybe about a minute long, where she talks about channeling and information and contact with these alien entities through channeling and remote viewing.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah.
I wanted. Other side of the aisle, talking about channeling and remote viewing, Billy Crone saying, no. You can't go there because you're contacting entities that have a nefarious agenda. So there's another clip, which I didn't remember, and I click it on, and I'm just kind of cruising and listening to it, and she starts off, the powers that be, and she explains who the powers that be. if you listen to the whole testimony, she's talking about the entities that appeared to her in that craft, and she was taken aboard. The powers that be are saying that they're going to create some kind of a plague, and everyone's going to have to get vaccinated. It's going to be a global vaccination. Now, she's saying this in 2016.
Wow.
She got the doubt in 2004. And here we are in 2021. When I heard that, I about fell out of my chair. I was just totally blown away. And we use that in the film to show, and I basically look at the camera and go, how did she know that? And this is why we call it the coming great deception, a Luciferian endgame. Make no mistake about it. There are powers that be on this planet that are in league with them absolutely all day long. And this is why it's a nefarious agenda.
I would love to use a word other than amen at that moment. LA, I can't. Like, as somebody who is a seminary student and spent 3/4 of my life studying world religion and philosophy and trying to be that, quote, enlightened Renaissance man. Like, no way, man. No way. I can't in good conscience not share things like what you're sharing. I can't in good conscience not invite my audience to start sifting through what they see and start sifting through programs that have, like, a year ago we talked about the technology that they could shoot an equivalent size craft as a plasma hologram from a moving aircraft. It was like holographic chaff, where they could make something that was hotter than their aircraft and bigger than their aircraft and moving faster so that the missile would go to that. And it's
there's no doubt in my mind that they have a technology. We actually interviewed someone on the show, Paul McGuire, and McGuire basically states that he talks about Project Bluebeam and the possibility of that. So it's not either or, it's both and. We've got that kind of technology. We've got that kind of technology. We can manipulate all that. I get that. But then you've got the stuff that, just people, pilots encounter of a tic-tac shape object that are not holographic projections, the stuff that's, out there buzzing airports and everything else. There was one over Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Fairly recently, a couple of days ago.
Yep.
My inbox lights up now with all of our friends of the show that are constantly sending me clips, which is just fantastic. So, we get a lot of good stuff, and it's there. The bottom line is something is going on. And again, the holographs can't account for the decades of calamizations, abductions, implants, hybrids. And, we've had people reporting seeing hybrids and having encounters with them. And I never want to see one. I absolutely never want to see one. There's no doubt in my mind. But, we get them from time to time.
Well, and that's a lot of what we've been saying is the fact of all these things combined makes for an excellent means of, quote, panic control, where you can create a panic within certain communities, where you can create a kerfuffle, so to speak, and kind of control that kerfuffle, especially with modern day algorithms. Like, people forget the fact that whenever you're taking fun little quizzes and things like that, even within our communities, even within our shared communities of the paranormal, the extraneous that mainstream media doesn't cover, folks, you got to remember that taking all those little surveys and everything else, that is the product being sold. So, man, the means of control at that point, the nefarious means of control that can be used and utilized at that point is mind-numbing, L.A. Even when you're talking about from the religious perspective, and this is somebody like, I know we didn't get into it in your last episode that you were on, but my audience knows I spent my first year in college as a Roman Catholic seminarian. I spent years teaching church history, religion, all kinds of things. So, like, it's been my life study and work to read the world religious texts and see these things, and even to see it within my own church where it's like, wow, the utter suppression of even thought form. Like, I can't even grasp the thought form of you telling me to believe in something ethereal outside of this physical world than telling me that a ghost doesn't exist. Like, I can't even get past that leap of freaking logic, dude.
Yeah.
And I have a complete and utter connection with my God on the capital G universal on a daily basis. So it's one of those that's like, wow, once again, to see the options on table for a means of control right now is so utterly frightening on so many levels to me.
Well, it is, and this is why the coming Great Deception, Luciferian Endgame, is the subtitle. Because when disclosure happens, that is the coming Great Deception. When they show up, they will tell us this, that they created all life on this planet. They genetically manipulated early man. They started the world's civilizations and the world's religions. Now at this critical juncture in human history, they, ET, are back to usher mankind into a golden age. Now, I heard this literally, and I'm not making this up, about 45 years ago. I heard that I was a New Age guy. I had just come out of living with a guru for 3 years in the ashram. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was completely agnostic at that point. And this guy was a born-again, spirit-filled Christian. And he was telling me this stuff 45 years ago.
Wow.
And I looked at him like he had three heads. He was way ahead of his time.
Yeah.
And John Marty, he's no longer with us. I said, John, that's crazy. But that's where it's going to be. That's what they're going to do. They're already setting things up for it. And that's where we are. We've already had the dry run with the COVID lockdowns. So we watched draconian laws enacted. People, and who's doing this? The only way the government can actually implement something is if they have the military behind them. If the military stands down and goes, we're not doing this anymore, then the 1,000 people that are running whatever country they're running aren't running anything anymore. The military will step in. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen here or anywhere else, but the problem is we've already seen the draconian measures that our government enacted. And my gosh, Canada, they're still in lockdown for crying out.
Yep.
Still in lockdown. So, welcome to the New World Order. And the people don't do anything. In fact, the pastor up there over the weekend held a church service, helicopter flying around in the woods, and they arrest him. I mean, can you even believe this crap? I mean, it's like, it's so Stalin-esque, it's unbelievable. We're being censored on all sorts of social media, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. And free speech is no longer, it's the speech that we want you to say. You are not allowed to talk about this, that, and the other thing. Well, screw you, pal. If you deplatform me, that's fine. I'll go to some other platform. I will not be silenced. I will not go quietly. End the story. People need to know the truth. And when they show up, everything will change instantaneously. And the thing that people need to understand, I'm reading a book that a friend of mine gave me. It's called Sapiens. And it's from a Darwinist, an ardent Darwinist, who believes in the whole evolutionary paradigm. And that's his opinion. But it's just hysterical as he goes, billions of years ago, the Big Bang happened. Well, that's theory. You don't know that. You think that happened, but where did the Big Bang come from? And who set that thing in motion? Oh, we don't have an answer for that. Okay, shut up and sit down. Quit telling me to drink the Kool-Aid. Then he goes about, I forget what it is, like 2 million years ago or some ridiculous thing, an ape gave birth to two chimpanzees. One chimpanzee or two females. Yeah. It's a chimpanzee. The other one was our great-great-great-great-grandmother. Well, you don't know that. That's all speculation. And we don't even know, it's so funny to hear him talk about the way evolution and natural selection works, like it somehow has a mind of its own. Natural selection has a mind of its own. No, it has no mind of its own. Survival of the fittest. I mean, it's Kool-Aid all day long, in my opinion. But to the Darwinists, this is what they believe. And so I always go back to, let me get this straight. We've got the reproduction system. Let's just go there and stop there. So the reproduction system between a male and a female is incredibly complex. And that DNA in the sperm, where does that come from? And it's intact. How does that work? And when that sperm meets an egg and penetrates the egg, there's an explosion and creation happens. That's life. And the DNA begins to create this complex code, which is called DNA, creates whatever it is that sperm and egg match to.
And responding to its external environment and multiplying cellularly and, doing those scientific things.
It's mind-boggling because there's someone who put that DNA, who created that DNA. But Darwinists know the jig is up. So they're looking out there for our progenitors. So when they show up here, look, why would Barack Hussein Obama, what was it, 3 weeks ago? He says this, that, when they finally show up, when the aliens reveal themselves, there's going to be new religions. That's the first thing out of his mouth. There's going to be new religions. Well, wait a minute. How do you know that? Why are you telling us there's going to be new religions? Once again, the coming great deception. This dovetails into the book of Revelation, found in our Bibles, the guidebook of the supernatural, in ways that just blow my mind. Here you got this ex-president saying there's going to be new religions. You're right, because the Bible tells us there's going to be a one-world global religion at the time of the Antichrist. And the late Dr. Chuck used to say that the Antichrist may boast some sort of an alien connection. So I'm not making this stuff up. I mean, I'm not making it up. It's there and it's happening. And people need to wake up and understand that it's not coming, it's here and it's unfolding even as we speak.
As you were speaking a minute ago, I just brought it up on screen for everybody. You and your quest for truth and enlightenment in the capital E, capital U, universal sense, L.A., remind me of the poem Tiger by William Blake. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what a mortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In what distant deeps or skies burnt the fire of thine eyes? On what wings dare he aspire? What the hand dare seize the fire? And what shoulder and what art could twist the sinews of thy heart? And when thy heart began to beat, what dread hand, what dread feet? What the hammer, what the chain, and what furnace was thy brain? What the anvil, what the grasp dare its deadly terrors clasp? When the stars threw down their spears and watered heaven with their tears, did he smile his work to see? Did he who made the lamb make thee? Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye dare frame thy fearful symmetry? Like literally, I don't know why that popped into my head, but it was one of those like, this is what he's trying to say. This is what he's trying to bring to light. Is the fact that this is there, like people like you have been trying to shoot red flares into the sky for years. LA, like not even throwing up flags of warning, like shooting flares while you ride brilliant steeds of, hey, pay attention, this may be happening. So I think that poem brilliantly describes you, your passion behind this topic, and your literal recent revelation of the impact of this topic. Not that you haven't been researching things like Nephilim and their impact on the world around us and that continued thought form in the world around us. Everything else, literally for decades. Like, I've been listening to you on shows like Coast to Coast since I've been listening to shows like Coast to Coast, which is like 25 plus years, man. So your work is vast, it's huge, it's voluminous. But the fact that that concept is just now coming around to echo in the halls of society is phenomenal to me. And the fact that people like you have been unwavering, more than steadfast in your belief about what is happening, what is coming, what's even coming down the line right now, literally 3 days from now, that document is due. So, just a question, because we do have you for like another 15 minutes almost. It just, God, man, the minute clock just turned. So, what do you see coming down the pipeline 3 days from now? Not just as religious revelation in that right, but societally. What do you see happening from this revelatory document coming from our U.S. government and entities thereof?
Well, I would like to hope that they're going to come clean, but they more than likely won't.
Yeah,
it'll be sort of Texas two-step. There'll be just enough to keep people moving along.
Yep.
But nothing to. Let's put it this way: I don't think they're going to show us film from the Roswell crash where they're carting off the bodies. I don't think we're going to see anything like that. They may show us some very good pictures, better than the goofy tic-tac shape ones, which are still really good. Just understand me. But they may have some really cool pictures. Let's hope we see some of that. They may come clean with some of the back engineering that they've done. I would, but again, they're not going to give us the goods. They're going to say we've been able to back engineer certain things, which are top secret, and we can't do it because of national security reasons, which is a big basket that everything is kept in, and that's how they can redact basically the entire page.
Exactly.
If they just say national security and that's it. So it's going to be a Texas two-step. They'll give just enough to try to assuage Congress's curiosity, as it were, but nothing revelatory. On the other hand, you see, and I wrote about this years ago, when Roswell happened in '47, and I believe that it was we have too many witnesses that I've spoken to one-on-one.
Oh, it definitely happened. Yeah. The incidences stated by most witnesses definitely happened.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And those who think it's a weather balloon are selling you a bridge someplace.
It's like saying Waco didn't happen the way we know it unfolded.
Yeah,
it's quite literally.
Yeah. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid, will you? So, the bottom line is, when Roswell happened, you had this group of people in basically the shadow government, and they're running everything behind the scenes. And at that point, they were still in league with the president and Congress on some level. But after Eisenhower, after Dallas, everything changed. Okay, everything changed. But these people, along with Eisenhower, put the kibosh on the Roswell crash and ran the weather balloon story. Why? Because they knew about War of the Worlds, and they said, American public is going to freak out, can't do this. It's going to cause mass panic, and it'll destabilize the country.
Yeah.
So for the next, 70 years plus, they've been running this campaign, Star Trek, Star Wars, numerous, too many to count. It's actually in my book. I listed all the TV shows and films that deal with the whole alien deal, and it's just page after page after page, not to fill up pages of the book, but to show that there's a concerted effort to basically get everybody used to the idea.
My life of beloved movies would literally not exist L.A.? I'm 45. Like my entire childhood, other than Indiana Jones, would just be wiped off.
That's my point. So the old guard is now dead. When they were in power, let's say they were in their 40s and 50s, so that's in 47. Well, the old guard is pretty much gone. I would say 100% gone by this time. So the new people have come in. They've been trained by the old guard, but they're going, no, it's time. We can't hold this thing forever. And that's why in 2017, they started rolling it out. And since then, it's been a steady rollout. And at some point, they're going to come clean on Roswell. At some point. And there'll be a mea culpa, and they'll try out some, general, whatever. Yeah. I mean, some spokes guy will come out. Well, look, I talked to Jesse Marcel Jr. before he died. It's a handwritten. It's actually the article or the interview is republished in my book, Disclosure: The Coming Great Deception. It's in the book, not the film, but it's there, and it's a riveting interview. He handled the wreckage. I mean, it's as close to the event as you can. His father was the guy that was the first guy, other than Mac Brazel, to see it and to handle it.
Yep.
Why would he wake his wife at 2:30 in the morning and his son and show them, handle this material, you'll never see it again. This came from another world.
Yeah.
That's
make it a point to wake you up.
Exactly. He knew what a weather balloon was. He saw them every single day as the base's intelligence officer. To try to pin the ludicrous idea that Marcel Sr. would mistake a weather balloon for a UFO is absolutely insulting to the man's intelligence and who he was as an intelligence officer.
His career as a trained observer, literally millions of dollars, even at that day and time, millions of dollars put into his training as years of a trained observer and intelligence officer.
I mean, it's the height of absurdity. And that was, but you tell the lie often enough. And I remember these two guys who came out with a film a while back that insisted that Roswell was a weather balloon. And I just looked at Richard Shaw and I watched it together in the theater. And the next day we gave it 2 thumbs up because we were nice people. We could have ripped the thing to shreds and we didn't. We just gave it 2 thumbs up. And we said, great film. Way to go, guys. Glad you got a national exposure with it. But Rick and I have a different opinion, and this is what we think. And that's what we did. In other words, we weren't going to bash their film. That's fine. Who cares, right?
Well, there's no need to. And the question is, if their film leads people to looking into the situation, if it leads people to exploring that situation, period, is it something that you should poo-poo and put to the side? Or is it something that you should at least give some credence to within the community?
Which is why we gave it 2 thumbs up, and we said, bully for you guys for getting national exposure.
Yeah.
And we took the high road. But we gave our opinion, and we talked about Roswell. Yeah. And I've never backed down for that. Roswell was the real deal. I've got 2 witnesses, not only Jesse Marcel Jr., but we had a deathbed confession from Colonel Hill, which we actually showed in the film. It didn't make it in the miscut. We'll use it at some point in time. Colonel Hill comes on the record via the 2 people who were pastors that were with him for basically a year before he passed. And after Colonel Hill told them the story, he passed. So it was within a month. So it was essentially a confession. He was flown out from Dallas, Fort Worth to Roswell to make communication with one of these entities which were still alive. He had like 3 different degrees, spoke different languages, real smart guy, tried to make contact with this entity, was unable to do so. But he was burdened down by this whole thing, and it was like a deathbed confession, and he said, Roswell was not a weather balloon. Yeah. And he was there. And he also confirmed that the material was shipped to Wright-Patterson. So, I mean, we know all these things, but to actually hear it from someone who knows is very telling.
Man, LA, once again, I cannot thank you enough, number one, for answering Michelle's call when asked. I would love to have you on once again and again. There's a reason why I asked if we could link your YouTube channel to our Dudes and Beer website and of course to our soon-to-be Curious Realm website. Like, the website exists. It's all duplicate content, folks. If you like what LA is saying, I'm here to tell you, stop on by and check out his channel. Subscribe, man. Even today when I was telling someone, just casually chatting with someone, LA, about I gotta roll, I gotta prepare for my show tonight and kind of do a little deep dive on a couple topics, things like this. I mentioned your name and someone was like, oh my god, I just watched part of the Nephilim series the other day, like I rabbit holed. And wow, I was like, welcome to the mind and the world of L.A. Marzulli, because I've been deep diving into your world and the topics of Nephilim and things like that for smooth the last half of my life. I'm 45 now, and the work that you have done in this field, the voluminous work that you have done. Even on the trail of the Nephilim itself, before we let you go, one last chance for shameless self-promotion. Tell everybody, other than our store, where they can go to subscribe to your channel, where they can go to buy their copy of On the Trail of the Nephilim, Book 1, Book 2, even the Revealing. Like, it goes insanely. And once again, where they can go to get this free copy of UFO Disclosure, The Coming Deception, and Luciferian Endgame.
Well, the best place to go is streaming.lamarzulli.net. Streaming.lamarzulli.net. You can download the film for free. All of our other films are there. You can also go to the website, lamarzulli.net. So it's very simple. You can also get the free app, which is Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural Report. Never miss our daily show on YouTube, which is L.A. Marzulli on YouTube. So all the links are there, lamarzulli.net. Watch the film, Disclosure. It's free. Pass it forward.
Amen to that. In quite literally the truest sense of the word of amen. Like, pass that on, people. The whole reason why I was like, hey, Michelle, could it even be possible on such short notice to have LA on? And the fact that I was able to get you on, the fact that you were willing to come on, thank you so much, man. I cannot wait until the next revelation, till 3 days from now, till we see what's going on. So thank you so much for your time this evening. And thank you so much again for everything that you do over at lamarzulli.net.
Glory to the King.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, and until next time, we'll talk to you very soon, sir.
I hope so. Always good. Take care.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye. And, wow, what an amazing interview to sit back and talk to somebody like L.A. Marzulli about the topic of Nephilim, about the concept of everything that is going on in the world of disclosure and what might actively be coming. Now, our next guest right now, while I get connected with him, while we were on the line with LA, I actively got a message from him. Mitchell Gerber came on during episode 300, folks, and I am so entirely happy to have him on again because, of course, it has been in the news recently about not organ harvesting in China been in the news, but the Uyghurs have been in the news, and the, quote, cultural differences, as quoted by our president, have been in the news. And it was like, wow, really? How about the Falun Gong practitioners? How about the Uyghurs that have been taken and their organs live transplanted, like their organs live harvested for transplant via order on the black market? So I reached out to Mitchell Gerber, and we will be contacting him while we check out this amazing video from the actual UN, China's transplant crimes exposed at the United Nations Human Rights Council, September 24th, 2019.
Mr. Vice President, the Durban Declaration affirms the urgent need to prevent, combat, and eliminate all forms of trafficking in persons, including organ trafficking. China Tribunal, a People's Tribunal chaired by Sir Geoffrey Nice, considered all available evidence and concluded that forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience, including the religious and ethnic minorities of Falun Gong and Uyghurs, had been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that it continues today. This involves hundreds of thousands of victims. Acting on independent legal advice, the tribunal concluded that commission of crimes against humanity against Falun Gong and Uyghurs had been proved beyond reasonable doubt, victim for victim, and death for death. Cutting out the hearts and other organs from living, blameless, harmless, peaceable people constitutes one of the worst mass atrocities of this century. Organ transplantation to save life is a scientific and social triumph, but killing the donor is criminal. Government and international bodies must do their duty not only in regard to the possible charge of genocide, but also in regard to crimes against humanity, which the tribunal does not consider to be less heinous. It is the legal obligation of UN member states and the duty of this Council to address this criminal conduct. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
That is, of course, the audio from the UN Council on Ethics. And welcome to the show, Mitchell Gerber. How are you today?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
My God, man. Epically excited that, all of these button juggles work tonight. I can't... As somebody who does this for a living, and B, is the producer live and the host of his own show, I'm pretty impressed that all these button juggles worked and that we did not have a technical hiccup one. So welcome to the show. And man, that I remember when I first had you on for episode 300, Mitchell. I assured you that I would be having you on again and again and again and again, because this topic was so world-shaking, so world-changing, that much like the topic of human trafficking, things like that, it cannot be ignored. And I can't live without shining a light on this topic. And to know that investigative journalists like you have risked their career to bring it to light, have put themselves on the line, and even gone to the extent of living in foreign countries to protect yourself, is amazing to me. So once again, welcome to the show tonight, and thank you so much for all the work that you have done in this realm.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Chris. I'm very grateful to share with you and your audience about this, because it's truly come to the point where the battle lines are drawn, and really, truly, this is about to be exposed, and I'm just grateful to be with you.
Well, and like I said, for me, there have been catalyst moments in this show. Meeting Billy Joe Kane of Radical Empathy Education Foundation and helping them get some of their first press about like groundbreaking VR work to help teach people to recognize people that have been human trafficked. You know, like this is something that happens in our backyard of every country across the globe. And to know that people like you have risked their professional foundation, their professional career, their life and their livelihood to expose something like this, I am merely humbled for the fact that you were willing to use my show as a platform. And I can't personally wait until we rebrand this show so that we can get you to an even larger audience and possibly AM airwaves and everything else here in America, because the information that you were doing at Stop Organ Harvesting, etc., is just phenomenal. Before we get too deep, let's familiarize the audience with you, your body of work, and how you got involved with the cause of organ trafficking in China to begin with, Mitchell.
Sure, Chris. Thanks again for having me. I believe strongly in a code of honor and duty that stems deeply from my heart and the spirit of my fighting spirit, I believe, my intuition. And a saying that goes something like this, that to fail to support the good and to fail to expose the evil is unacceptable. And what is a man who cannot make the world a better place? And when I started in 2001, I was studying international business and foreign relations at the University of Georgia, one of the top 10 schools in the country at that time. And I was 21 years old, and I was studying a lot of business, and I was interning at a big investment firm that my father set me up on, and I was destined to make a lot of money and be very successful and drive Ferraris and date beautiful women. But on a fateful day, once upon a time in history and antiquity, on actual May 4th, 2001, and I kind of it's almost like ritualistic or symbolic that the May 4th, may the force be with you, in Star Wars with the great Jedi fighting against the Sith. May 4th, 2001, I was introduced to the mission that I have been upholding and uptaking for the last 20 years of my life, now being landed in Vietnam for the last year, 100 miles away from the Chinese border, exposing this new form of evil. And on that faithful day, everything changed. And how I can relate that day to now, or to historical periods, basically 60 years ago, when Felix Frankfurter, a U.S. Supreme Court judge of the Jewish faith, heard that the Nazis were slaughtering Jews and others in concentration camps, his first reaction was, I can't believe this is true. American society reacted to the Holocaust, believed the unbelievable. Okay, and when the U.S. soldiers liberated the camps, they were completely astounded by the horrific scenes that they witnessed. I mean, never in their wildest dreams or wildest minds that this was going on, right?
It was the reality is what's funny.
Yes.
It's not that it hadn't been reported. It's that they were like, nah, come on, it's not that bad. Like, we got prisoner of war camps, right? Like, heck, we put all the Japanese in internment camps, but come on, like, they're getting 3 squares and 3 hots in a cot, right? Like, they aren't being impressed into labor. They aren't being burned and their body parts sold, or, the gold harvested from their teeth or anything, right?
Absolutely. And I couldn't believe that these people were able to carry out such heinous atrocities.
Yeah.
And one woman even accused the U.S. military. These are the German people. One woman even accused the U.S. military of fabricating the pictures to vilify Germany. And, some even demanded an answer. If such a horrific thing is happening around us, how come we have no idea of it? So the U.S. soldiers had no choice but to send the German people in groups to the concentration camps and let them see for themselves the indescribable atrocity. Some were even called up to dig the graves to bury the victims. Humans were completely shocked. And today, this history is repeated, where a large group of people, namely the Falun Gong, the Uyghur Muslims, the House Christians, and the Tibetans, particularly the Falun Gong, which we'll get into in a moment what it is, have been sent, these prisoners of conscience have been sent under the careful watch of the Chinese military to state-mandated hospitals, over 250 concentration camps and labor camps, 36 death camps, and over 1,800 state-mandated hospitals. Their organs are cut out of their bodies while alive. The blood is still flowing in their veins, just slightly sedated to keep them sedated so they won't, try to run away. And all their organs, from their pancreases, their livers, their lungs, their hearts, their corneas, even the skin, are removed forcefully. The bodies then burned in the crematories to conceal the evidence in the boiler rooms of the hospitals, and then the organs sold off for millions of dollars to fuel a multi-billion-dollar business that has been run by the Chinese Communist Party to this day for at least 21 years now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just the facts of it are horrifying. And as the video that you gave me is labeled, quite literally, and I would like to play it right now. It's about 2 minutes in length. It's called Hard to Believe. And folks, if you didn't believe the video that led into Mitchell Gerber, which was quite literally the UN hearing from the doctors sent by the UN to investigate these, quote, rumors that this was happening. Like they said, this is no rumor. This is happening. This is a thing. Yet still to this day, 2021, China sits on the board of human affairs in the UN. So let's check out this video. Hard to believe.
Prisoners were disappearing into labor camps in mass numbers. At the same time, Chinese hospitals began promoting their organ transplant expertise.
I'm David Matus, and with me is David Kilgore. We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. David Kilgore is a former member of Parliament and former cabinet minister for Asia Pacific, and I'm a Winnipeg lawyer doing immigration, refugee, and international human rights law in Winnipeg. And we have now done our investigation, and we're producing this report.
And I didn't know whether it was true or not, and so my task initially was to try to figure out a way of approaching the issue so that I could either prove it or disprove it and not just walk away and say, I don't know.
The number of executions in China varied widely depending on who was counting. But Matus says no matter which number he used, the number of executions and the number of organs didn't add up.
The transplant volumes increased substantially after the persecution of Falun Gong began. And I mean, there's a lot of other evidence, but the most likely explanation for the increase is the Falun Gong.
We pursued every investigative trail we could find. In the report, you will see that there are 18 different avenues of proof and disproof we considered and evaluated. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true. We believe them to be true, that this harvesting is indeed happening.
Matus says what made Falun Gong organs especially attractive was the practitioners' healthy lifestyle. They do not drink or smoke. On many of the recordings of phone calls made to more than 100 Chinese hospitals, doctors assure callers that transplant organs are from healthy Falun Gong practitioners.
都是那种健康的法轮功是吧？健康的法轮功。对，看就是学得好的才能做完，因为这种东西做了保证质量的。那是都要像你们都要做监狱去自己去挑选是吧？对，肯定。
That is what is wild and what is once again what most people tend to think of as almost sadly conspiracy theory, Mitchell, is the fact that these people have been focused on because of their lifestyle, that they are actively just taken, whether they be from prisons, what have you, but taken. And as you said, organs, skin, other things harvested while fully alive and conscious.
Absolutely. This is a new form of evil, Chris, and I'm sure your listeners are horrified by this, and it's extremely heavy and incredibly hard to believe, because here you have a superpower, that has the second largest economy, the second largest military, the largest population. They are the superpower on the world stage, controlling a lot of the governing bodies. They have 4 specialized units in the United Nations. They control the World Health Organization. A lot of very powerful Western corporations, multinationals, multimedia corporations, big tech, big pharma are aligned with the CCP. It's really crazy. And to understand how organ harvesting could happen in China, it's crucial to understand that there's no limit to how far the Chinese Communist Party will go to wipe out something or someone. And we must really be clear that China, the Chinese people, the Chinese civilization, even the Chinese government are not the problem. It's the CCP that controls them and has hijacked China, just like the deep state has hijacked America, right? And when the persecution started in July 1999, 1 month before the complete banning, folks, of this practice, Falun Gong is a spiritual movement. For those who don't know what Falun Gong is, it teaches the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, right? It emphasizes character building and virtue rather than some kind of extremist cult where you have to leave your family, you're forced to do this or do that. There's some money involved. But it's a true path to health and spiritual elevation. And like myself, coming from a Judeo-Christian family, an investigative journalist, I was very attracted to Falun Gong because, and initially drawn to it because of its healing effects, number one. And a significant reason for Falun Gong's popular appeal, especially becoming the largest spiritual movement in China, Chris, where 1 out of every 10 Chinese national citizens were practicing in China, was due to its simple and straightforward requirements. I mean, just live your life according to truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, let go of negative attachments, and be responsible to yourself and others, and just focus on what matters, becoming a better person. But the Chinese Communist Party, they didn't want this. They didn't like that at all. They wanted to destroy it, create a raw material population where they could just send hundreds and thousands to see state-mandated hospitals under the careful watch of the Chinese military, and just cut their organs out of their bodies. And people were like, "Well, where's the evidence? Your credentials. You're living in Vietnam. Okay, where's the evidence? Show us the evidence." Especially for the diehard skeptics. And I love the diehard skeptics because they will question everything until they know the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And that comes with some serious evidence, yeah?
Sure.
So
the problem is you tend to present all the evidence from the get-go.
Yes, exactly.
So it's one of those, like, I would challenge anybody to challenge what you have. And the doctors that you have, because the same doctors that, like you've said, that you would bring them on this show before, the same doctors that went before the UN. I mean, you're not living in Vietnam for no good reason.
Chris, there's always trolls. There are always naysayers. There are always disbelievers. You can't please everybody.
Sure.
Even when you slap it in front of their faces and say, look at the evidence, the 52 pieces of evidence, read the Kilgore and Mattis report, visit endtransplantabuse.org, read the slaughter, read all the reports, the testimonies. Just take a look at the China Tribunal that just came out in 2019, 160 pages report with extensive appendices that include details of all documents, reports, witness testimonies, and submissions reviewed by the tribunal over 12 months. Public hearings were held December 2018 and April 2019, in the course of which over 50 fact witnesses, experts, and investigators contributed evidence.
By 2000, Falun...
Sorry.
No problem. And even I joined the coalition. I brought the coalition to London to a child trafficking court where we had hearings. We were the main presentation. 2 hours we introduced the child trafficking court, where we had, high-ranking officials, London bankers, MK Ultra victims, child trafficking experts talk about this. I mean, and talk about the pedophilia and the human trafficking that's going on around the world.
Yeah.
And we brought Ethan Gutman, who is a nominee of the Nobel Peace Prize, who wrote the book The Slaughter, a 10-year investigation on the Uyghur Muslims and the House Christians and the Falun Gong. We had David Kilgore and David Mattis, the two gentlemen you actually saw in one of the clips that you were sharing from the award-winning documentary Hard to Believe, which you can view for free on YouTube. Just type in Hard to Believe. It's a 54-minute documentary that was released by Swoop Films in the lockdown periods. And these two esquires came out in 2006. Yeah, those two gentlemen right there, David Mattis and David Kilgore, with 18 pieces of hard-hitting evidence beyond a reasonable doubt that would turn any juror to deliberate their final verdict of guilty as charged on all counts. That the CCP has been involved in slaughtering on demand, killing people on demand, and reducing waiting times for organs, lungs, pancreases, hearts from 4 to 8 years to 2 weeks, minimum. Wow. 2 weeks.
Wow.
Okay, to get a
kidney. 2-week order time. And
yes.
That is quite literally one of those concepts that, when you think about it, is mind-numbing. And you may ask the fact of is this real? Is this true? Another point that I would like to bring up, and another clip that you have shared with us, is titled "Genocide of a Lifetime," which I think kind of narrows some of this conversation down and really pinpoints some of it for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Example of no human rights in China is killing a peaceful community of Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghurs, who are Muslims, and Tibetan Buddhists, and Christians, house Christians, for their organs, kidneys, livers, and so on, and then selling the organs to wealthy Chinese or foreigners, and the people are killed in the process.
The belief that I have, I share with David Kilgore, that organ harvesting is widespread in China, and it is restricted almost exclusively to Falun Gong practitioners. The Falun Gong are to the Chinese regime of today what the Jews were to the Nazis during the war. And we should all take note of this and look at China with new eyes.
There's no evidence that Falun Gong is a cult of any sort. There's no evidence of political action to try and bring down the Chinese government. There's no evidence of anything other than a deep desire to be left alone to practice their spiritual beliefs in peace and to not be locked up and murdered.
David and I have met Falun Gong practitioners in probably 50 countries.
Or even more, maybe.
Okay. All walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds, all education. I've found it to be a wonderful group of people.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. I mean, Falun Gong, first of all, it's not even an organization because it's a set of exercises with a spiritual foundation. Yeah. Everything's on the internet. You don't pay anything. You don't sign up to anything. You can start whenever you want. You can stop whenever you want. You don't even have to tell anybody you're doing it. Their principles are very simple and ethical. And I mean, all of that is true.
I think that is one of the biggest points, is the fact that this is just a thing that's out there. This is just something that, and a practice that people have put forth as something healthy to do in the world and a healthy way to live life. And as it put forth at the beginning of that, these people, literally because of their choice of living this healthy lifestyle, because you choose to get up and meditate in the morning and keep yourself clean of alcohol and adulterants and live a healthier lifestyle than most people out there eating 2 out of 3 meals out of a box every day in America, Mitchell, that you yourself, were you to step foot in the realm of communist China, would actively be a target because of your practitioner status of Falun Gong, correct?
Absolutely. I practice Falun Gong. I come from a Judeo-Christian family, and I've investigated this amazing group, and I've learned the exercises. The qualities are quite attractive. The core principles of Falun Gong, Chris, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, are deeply rooted in traditional Chinese culture. And that's what made it very appealing, because I love Bruce Lee. I love Ip Man. I don't know if you've seen the series of Ip Man, Donnie Yen, I think his name is. But anyway, the main character. But I love the organicness and the naturalness. That's what I love. The non-conformity, the non-forceful way of life that the ancient Indian gurus or the ancient Chinese masters emanate. And that's why I like yoga, I like Tai Chi. But what I loved about Falun Gong is that I've never experienced something as peaceful and as organic and as natural and as free. And immediately, I practiced many things in my life, from yoga to Tai Chi. I've traveled around the world. I've met many spiritual people, many gurus and teachers, and I've participated in many health and wellness festivals and events. Yet with Falun Gong, I've never felt so incredibly healthy, positive, and uplifted in a very short amount of time. And when 70 to 100 million people have taken up this practice by 1999, just through word of mouth alone, it just shows the power and life force of this spiritual movement. All illnesses, ailments, and injuries were vanishing. Millions of dollars of healthcare costs were being reduced. Suicide rates were feeling better. The mindset, Tony Robbins and a lot of these gurus, they talk about mindset. All these very popular and successful business people, they talk about a healthy mindset, healthy positive thoughts, affirmations. You are what you think. Yeah. Napoleon Hill wrote the book Think and Grow Rich. Well, what you think of is what you will become. So when you clean your mind and quiet your mind and think of good things, your body will follow. So a healthy mind and a healthy body and a healthy spirit. This is the foundation of what Falun Gong shares and teaches, as many universal religions and spiritual sects do. Buddhism, Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, they all have these spiritual values, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Yet the Chinese Communist Party, reasons why they banned it is because of the size of its following. 100 million people made the communist leaders fearful of losing control of the people's hearts and minds. Not to mention its guiding principles, truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance, appeared incompatible with communism, atheist ideology, which the party had forcefully imposed on the Chinese people during the Cultural Revolution. In addition, certain communist officials saw Falun Gong as an easy target and used its vilification as a tool for their own political advancement. But the most diabolic form of murder came in 1999, when a large group of Falun Gong practitioners were rounded up and sent to the state-mandated hospitals and slaughtered for their organs, because during the inception of Falun Gong and up from the rise of Falun Gong and the great popularity of this practice, the Chinese Communist Party and the medical, the Ministry of Health were conducting research into how the organs were becoming incredibly healthy from the exercises. As I said before, illnesses, ailments, and injuries were vanishing. Very serious diseases. People were walking, feeling better, getting out of wheelchairs. I mean, it was unbelievable. So they targeted Falun Gong specifically to make money off their organs and fuel a multi-billion-dollar business that is happening to this day.
And I mean, I've got it up right now from HRW.org. China uses rule of law to justify Falun Gong crackdown. And even what actively brought me to contacting you was the recent articles talking with Biden talking about the Chinese treatment of Uyghurs and other people like Falun Gong practitioners as quote a cultural difference. And it's like, wow, that's a heck of a way to put genocide. Is cultural difference. We're just having cultural differences about how we view somebody. And it's like, no, man, like there is a straight up known, like we just heard it from the investigators of the UN. We just heard it from their lips. The same lawyers that they sent to investigate it. That this is no rumor. This is happening.
Absolutely. I mean, the U.S. House of Resolutions, the U.S. House of Resolutions, U.S. House of Representatives. Sorry, it's a little early for me. I've been up since 6 a.m. on talk shows.
I know.
The U.S. House of Representatives passed numerous resolutions, HR 201, 203. They've passed numerous. The U.S. Congress has almost put sanctions on the Chinese communist regime. However, because there was a database that was leaked by the largest newspaper in Australia, showing that there were at least 2 million Chinese spies that have infiltrated into the U.S. government, the UK government, the Canadian government, and the British Parliament, as well as the multinational corporations, and they have been concealing and bribing and paying off, and just not wanting anything to come out. And even the mainstream media has been bribed and paid off by the Chinese Communist Party to spew communist mouthpiece garbage.
Just out of curiosity, I want to ask you a question. When did those things from Australia happen?
You mean the leak?
Yeah. When did that come about?
The database leak, yeah? You're talking about. I believe it was, when was it? I think it was 2000. I'm not sure. I think
it was just this last year.
Yeah, 2020, I believe it was.
Yes. No.
Yes.
Even more recent. I've got it up from Engadget right now. Facebook blocks users from sharing news links in Australia. If you remember, anybody sharing any link to Facebook from an Australian news source, it was blocked for weeks. For weeks.
Yeah.
It was blocked because it was considered like the RT, where it was like anything coming from Australia is horrible. And it's like, well, what happens if the last ping for my server comes from Australia, but my site's in the U.S.? Doesn't matter. You're getting blocked because it's coming from Australia.
Absolutely. And according to the reports from the Australian newspaper, this was about 2020, even 21. Yeah.
This is an Engadget article from February 17th, 2021. Yes. Politicians are set to vote on a bill that would force tech giants to pay for content. And that exact thing where any news article terminating from an Australian URL was blocked by Facebook as disinformation.
So they are aligned completely with the CCP. Yeah, absolutely. You nailed it, Chris. And to add to your point, according to the reports from the Australian newspaper featured in the Economic Times, The information includes official records such as party position, birth date, national ID number, and ethnicity. It revealed that members of China's ruling party hold prominent positions in some of the world's biggest companies, including involved in the development of COVID-19 vaccines like Pfizer and financial institutions such as HSBC. And obviously you got the China Joe colluding and his pedophile son Hunter deeply in bed with the CCP. I mean, we don't even get me started on
hugely.
I mean, don't even get us started. Yeah.
No, I was going to say, don't even get started on the state of Nevada and the connections of Biden and other people with the Chinese government and the Bureau of Land Management and the connections of China and things that happened years ago with people like Cliven Bundy and stuff like that. Where it was literally Chinese interests encroaching on what was BLM land where they'd bought the rights, and that came up against the Bundy's property, and that became a whole standoff. Like people forget this, and that was quite literally the root of the Cliven Bundy situation out there. And it came to bear that there were major connections to senators and this Chinese company and all kinds of stuff. So it's a pretty regular thing. And like you said, good Lord, it was all of a couple years ago that Chinese interests bought up most of the pork interests in America.
Absolutely. And to add to your point also, in February of 2020, the principal deputy director of the CDC, you know that lovely agency, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, that one? Well, the principal deputy director publicly announced that the Confucius Institute would be an asset for the American COVID-19 response. And during the briefing, this lovely beauty, she's a beauty, isn't she, praised the CCP propaganda arm for getting directly involved with the CDC's messaging and community outreach. Imagine that. Imagine that, Christopher.
The exact same thing where it's and you know, much like where most of the personal protective equipment shipped around the world, COVID tests, even things like that, went directly back to CCP connections, went directly back to CCP manufacturers, manufacturers tied with the Chinese government. So even the fact that years ago when we, quote, stopped gain of function technology and research into this in the United States, that all of that actively shifted over to the labs in Wuhan, China. We just outsourced it. We didn't stop doing it. We just outsourced the research.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And don't even get me started on Harvard. Yeah. Harvard University as in a communist Chinese indoctrination center. I mean, the Harvard, the Post and many others, the Washington Compost and other CCP mouthpieces are still trying to claim that the COVID was random rather than a CCP creation, is anomalous, considering it's widely recognized at this point that the virus is a bioweapon, and they try to cover it up. Hunter Biden's maintained close relationship with the CCP's tied energy tycoon. I mean, listen, everything's covered, and no one can deny the facts. And honestly, those who are banning people like myself, like you, I mean, my YouTube channel is banned, is deleted. My Twitter is shadow banned. I can see it with the amount of views I get with my videos. I'm right now in the Facebook jail. I can't post anything. I'm 6 days in lockdown, blocked from Facebook.
Oh, okay? Only 6?
Only 6. Only 6. I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I'm still connected. My last account got deleted, and then I got back in. But I mean, what a mission! But those who ban the truth are complicit with evil.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And you know, I've got the Bloomberg article up right now from February 6, 2020. Harvard leads U.S. colleges that received $1 billion from China. And folks, go look it up. This was money that was unreported to the federal government. Like, right here. I've got it highlighted at 1.8 billion and the UK at 1.1 billion. The closer ties may be in jeopardy after the arrest of a Harvard chemistry professor accused of lying about his connections to China and concealing payments to him from a Chinese university. That's the same professor that in his affidavit to the State Department said he was hired by China to go over and help create, quote, a nanobiology lab.
No, absolutely. And another interesting fact, because we're only dealing on conspiracy fact. We're not dealing in conspiracy theories. You know, this is true to life, you know.
Yep. I'd love to say it's conflation. I'd love to say it's some horrible concept that we have in our brain, man. I would love to.
I know. I know. But after 21 years, that conflation is a conspiracy theory. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But the organ harvesting is conspiracy fact. But to share another point, a great point with you, because we're on a roll. By the time Donald Trump ran for president, it was obvious that China's wealth and power and influence, in the United States had reached its zenith. I mean, Bill Clinton sold the entire manufacturing from all the baby boomers and all the great veterans that came back from the Great War down the line to Communist China in the NAFTA agreements in 1990, selling the Americans a consumer market that they now regret because now that bankrupted basically the entire American economy, and sent everything to China. All the manufacturing lost thousands of jobs. That's why you see in Detroit all the Ford Motors and all the Chrysler, they all went to China.
It's literally bankrupted the soul of American creation.
I couldn't have said it better. So let me share with you that the U.S. corporations, mostly Democratic but not exclusively so, these politicians fell over themselves to win favor with Beijing, and in a bid to continue having access to the country's massive and growing consumer base. But when Trump came into power, which is funnily enough, the New York Stock Exchange, the NYSE officials felt empowered enough to ignore an executive order issued by President Trump directing them to delist a number of Chinese telecom giants. And one of them, the U.S. intelligence identified as being linked to the Chinese military. Imagine that.
Yep. No, and I mean, you know, I've got it pulled up right now from BBC News. China's telecom giants asked for Wall Street relisting. This is January 2021. This is about 2 months after our election here in the United States, right as a president would actively, quote, take power. January 7th. They petitioned it the day after election counting. The day after. I've got it right there. January 7th. They petitioned the NYSE for relisting. Wow, that is quite literally the day after the transition of power.
I don't know if you've had Mark Lindell on your show.
No.
I really, truly hope you haven't. Okay, I wish he can come on, or Lynn Wood, but Mark Lindell came out with the absolute proof about the rigging of the elections and the stealing. And look, whether you're a political, you're on the right or the left, it doesn't matter. This is a human issue. But the fact of the matter is that the Chinese Communist Party was the culprit in hacking and rigging the election and actually funded the Dominion systems, the Dominion voting systems in the most historic election in history, and funded them with $400 million to switch the votes in favor of China Joe, and installed him as the CCP puppet, as he is now. I mean, you can make this stuff up, Chris. You can make this stuff up.
No.
And when you watch Mark Lindell's Absolute Proof, it's all there, black and white.
I mean, that's BBC. That's BBC. You cannot get a more, quote, credentialed foreign source. As I tell everybody on this show, follow whatever news you like. I don't care whatever country you live in. Follow whatever news you like. Follow its twin. But follow two opposing local sources, and follow at least 3 foreign sources of news. And amongst that, you should be able to sift the truth between that narrow scope that you're probably getting amongst the algorithm of your searches, period, be it social media, what have you, amongst the other sources that are conflicting locally, and then amongst that 3 international sources like BBC here that I follow, where it's literally talking about these telecom giants on January 7th trying to go against the delisting Trump order. Like, that's not even a local paper. That's not even anybody that's got a horse in the game. That's BBC.
It's insane. Absolutely. And, you know, it falls on deaf ears. I've been beating the drum for years, Chris. I've been beating it for years, and I'm a tired old warrior. I just want to retire and just enjoy life. But it's my heart keeps propelling me to expose these demons, these rats on a sinking ship that have nowhere to go and nowhere to hide. And I'm not here to attack anybody. I'm just so fed up with the weak-hearted, cowardly nature of these individuals that keep on aligning with the red devil, bent on destroying humanity and causing so much death and destruction, unleashing this bioweapon, and then lying about it, pretending that it's nothing to do with China. And then the same people who are so-called advocating and working so hard to protect humanity are the ones destroying humanity and adding to great calamity and atrocity by aligning with the CCP. And this is what I find most shocking. And going back to the evidence, I mean, short waiting times. I mean, the United States Department of Health and Human Services says average waiting period for organs in the U.S. is 2 years for a liver, about 4 to 8 years for a heart. In China, the waiting period is 2 weeks. Taking a grotesque lobster out of a tank, or in a grotesque restaurant, like taking a lobster out of a tank and just cutting it open and serving it on a kill-to-order.
I even got it more personal, man. Like the fact of how hard it is to match somebody with something like that, with anything, period, is phenomenal. But the fact that they are doing it to order by blood type, health restrictions, everything else, is what is not only dehumanizing, but so entirely nefarious.
Absolutely. And even just all you need is a police signature to sign off on the donor and off to the meat grinder, off to the slaughter. And the Chinese Communist Party has been using its military, its secret police, its hospitalization system, its economic, social, and political legs. I mean, this is with you right before the complete ban of Falun Gong on July 20th, 1999, of the spiritual movement. It's forbidden to practice. It's forbidden. All books were burned. This was like Nazi Germany all over again on steroids. Yeah, the Communist Party, the former president of the Chinese Communist Party in 1999, Jiang Zemin, he created a 610 office, a Gestapo-type office on June 10th, 1999, 1 month before the complete ban of Falun Gong that happened on July 20th of 1999. And this Gestapo-type agency called the 610 Office still, to this day, sits on top of the Communist Party system, controlling the government system, economic, social, and political systems for one directive and one directive only: to eradicate Falun Gong, declare war on it, and exterminate these people for their organs. Wow. Everything in Chinese society is tied to Falun Gong in one way or another, because it became the life force of China. And that is why people are like, well, what has it got to do with me, Mitch? I'm a million miles away. I got my family to deal with. My business is falling apart. I'm stressed out. What has it got to do with me? Well, look at your stress levels. Look at why your businesses are falling apart. Look at why billions of dollars have been lost. Your 401ks are being drained. The CCP, the bioweapon.
Even aside from that, it's the straight lack of empathy worldwide for our common man.
Yes,
it's the fact of when you watch that video at the UN, one of the first shots is a wide shot of the room, and you see the speakers, and it's horrifying how few people are in the room for that testimony. Horrifying.
Yeah. I know.
In something so major. And we have two more clips, and you're one of the few guests, Mitchell, that I insist on playing all these clips, because I think it's hugely important for people to grasp the scope of this. And in addition to that, I think that they're hugely impactful clips that really show the scope of this beyond any reporting that you may see that pops up spuriously, like I told you in my email, and like I told Michelle in our private conversation. These things have been popping up. Things like Biden saying, like, "Bah, it's just cultural differences," you know. Yeah, okay, I guess that what happened, like, back in Alabama, back in the 20s, was they were just cultural differences. You know, it wasn't a direct persecution of a directed people, you know, and this isn't a direct persecution of a directed people, which it is. And the next clip that I want to play, which would leave us two clips out here from all of them that you provide, which are crazily impactful, Mitchell. And the fact that most of the websites that you have been on have literally been banned from the internet. Most of the interview links that you have been eradicated now. It's horrifying.
I know.
It's horrifying.
I know.
We're one of the few, and like I said, I think it's because of the name Dudes and Beer that we've flown under the radar with a lot of these things and a lot of guests like you, man. But quite literally, when I play this next clip, I want people to think about that worldwide impact, that concept of what you were just saying, Mitchell, where how can I make a difference? What can me even knowing anything about this make a difference? And this next clip is called The World Needs to Know.
Crimes in history began taking place in hospitals throughout the country as organ transplants suddenly began to skyrocket.
We've been asked to investigate allegations that there has been harvesting of organs of Falun Gong in China. Our bottom line conclusion, after considering everything as best we could, was that the allegations are true.
I began conducting comprehensive interviews with medical professionals, Chinese law enforcement personnel, and over 50 refugees from the Laogai system. But I estimate that 65,000 Falun Gong were murdered for their organs from 2000 to 2008.
Essentially what organ harvesting means is they're taking Falun Gong practitioners literally like cattle, holding them in prison camps, testing their blood and other vital organs, and when someone comes into the country that needs a heart, a liver, a kidney, they find a match, they take the Falun Gong practitioner, extract their organs, of course killing them in the process.
people who are
While they're
expecting
alive, by the way.
this to sort of just be solved naturally by all we have to do is sit back and they'll fix it, this is wrong. The West has to take a role. And the one role the West can do is say, these are our values. We cannot go beyond this. There are certain lines we can't cross. This is a red line. That's an absolute red line.
Enver Tohti, the surgeon turned bus driver, says it's been 20 years since he removed the organs from that live prisoner. It remains a mystery why so few people have ever heard about the thing he says he cannot forget.
This is my experience. This is a real, true story. If you keep silence, this tragedy will continue. And people, they just don't want to touch this evil. Because if you touch this evil, maybe at the end of the day, you may not be able to tackle this the consequences. That is my guess.
And that's where things, once again, really, really, really hit that personal level, Mitch, where, how can we, once we know something, start to make a difference? How can we, much like you, sans having a podcast, sans having a reach, sans having episodes that are banned, much like your interviews, how can we as people and individuals start shooting these flares up day and night? How can we start making people aware? How can we start activating our, local outreach, just of knowledge, thrumming the webs of society, so to speak?
Yeah, Chris, I know it's very difficult. We cannot go to war with China. It would be a nuclear holocaust.
God, yeah. My God, I don't care what joined armies we have. Just even if it was man to man, they would march over us.
Oh, at this time, yeah. Especially with all this radical cancel culture. I don't know if you saw the other day, there were 3 army recruitment videos, one from Russia, one from China, and one from the US. Did you see our, when you see the Chinese army recruitment video versus the Russian versus the American, it was embarrassing. It was truly embarrassing.
I'm sure ours looks like some kind of twisted YMCA camp video.
God, you have to see it. Please type in.
For the next episode, folks, I'm going to find all 3 of those and back to back them.
Please.
Just for
Army
you,
recruitment videos. Exactly. Chinese, the Russian, and the American. After this, go take a look. You'll be shocked.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that I was looking at earlier was quite literally the Russian response to these allegations.
Yeah. I wish we could do more. This has been going on for 21 years. The investigative journalists, the amount of evidence that is out there, you see it. The documentaries, the petitioning. What your audience can do, basically, what I would suggest, and I know it's not a lot, but just to read the reports. If anyone that is listening is a lawyer or a professor, I appeal to the professors who have their students, watch the documentary Hard to Believe. It's a documentary online. We just watched a couple of clips from them. Hard to Believe, if you go to YouTube, it's a free documentary. Hard to Believe documentary, yeah. You can watch it, 54 minutes. It's been released on, that's it. It's on Swoop Films. And there you are. You can just watch it there, free of charge. That's the doctor who I'm actually going on a big talk show with him very soon. I would love to bring him next time on yours, Chris.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you can have him, you let me know, And we'll make time for you, man.
I will, for sure. People can go to endtransplantabuse.org, endtransplantabuse.org, and the reports are all there, black and white. What I would suggest, that's great, Chris. And I'll just guide you through it.
Yeah.
If your listeners and your viewers would like to just go endtransplantabuse.org, all the reports, so this is the main work, all the investigative reports. If you just click on the investigative and reports tab, there's the trial tribunal judgment, the update, the slaughter from all the government reports, the academic articles, books, documentaries. And then when you go to take action and video on the right-hand side, you can take action, the webinars, donate, how can you help, student movements, the advocacy, signed petitions and letters. And the video section is also very profound. The Coalition Roundtable, if you click on that, explain the video is great, but if you type, the Coalition Roundtable, those are 4-part series sharing from all the investigators and Miss World of Canada. I would highly recommend those.
Wow.
You can also go. All of it's there, black and white. You know, there are a lot of there are not a lot of trolls, but there are a certain amount of trolls that no matter what you say to them, they're not going to attack you.
I would just love to be able to, and I don't know if you're connected with them technically or anything like that, but I would love to be able to embed the End Transplant Abuse YouTube channel on our videos page on Dudes and Beer and our sister website coming up, Curious Realm, just so that people have access to this stuff 24/7, man, as easy as possible.
Please do. You know, you're not copywriting it. It's just you're supporting the work and you're voicing support. It's amazing. So please do. There's another one called stoporganharvesting.org.
Yep.
That's more clear as well. That's a website. I don't own any of these websites, ladies and gentlemen. I just advocate for them because I'm more of a messenger. I know who I am, and I'm confident in who I am. But I'm a nobody. I just like to give my life to expose this. And this was created by a good friend of mine. And long ago, and then he sent it off to some other people, but they've fixed up the website, and you can learn about what Falun Gong is.
Well, I mean, even since the last time that we've had you on, this website is entirely more responsive, and way better laid out. And kudos to them on that, and kudos to you to getting this information out there and really bringing this information to light to everybody.
Absolutely.
Let everybody know before we let you go here where they can go to find out more, where they can go to support, where they can go to even get involved locally or at a state, federal level in their area.
They could go to stoporganharvesting.org. And also, if they want to learn more about Falun Gong, which is great as well, faluninfo.net. If you want to share one more,
sure.
I think I've got two more websites. This one and
absolutely.
It's one more. Falun Info, because a lot of people would like to know what Falun Gong is and how to practice it and where to practice it. That's what it's an incredible website. Well done as well. What Falun Gong is, the 100 million people targeted and killed for their organs, and you can watch the videos, and it's fantastic. Now, the last one I would suggest is this is for the avid readers. This is for people who really want to read and learn, who love to watch documentaries or read. Yeah. If you type in, Chris, the communist spectre is ruling our world. Communist spectre. It's from the Epoch Times.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you know the Epoch Times.
Okay.
But a phenomenal editorial
I am familiar with it as much as my audience. So, communist spectre is ruling our times.
Ruling our world, yes. Communist spectre is ruling our world, yes.
Oh, look at that. Hey, how about Google for liking what we're talking about? Isn't that creepy enough?
It's not Amazon.
Oh, not Amazon.
Not Amazon, no. It's for free.
Epoch Times right there.
It's great. And people can actually, it's a special TV series. Okay. You can just go down. Ooh. That's a special TV series. It's really, really good. Or you can just go scroll a little bit down, and people who want to read it or listen to it, they can also do it as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
An amazing documentary publication and editorial series that will blow people's minds. Those are for the avid readers. It's a very heavy documentary, a lot of facts.
Yeah.
And the publication was released in 2008 and has actually led to the rebelling of at least 300 million Chinese people from the Chinese Communist Party, quitting all the affiliations and basically saying enough is enough after reading that. It's really opened the mind and shown the true face of communism and how the specter of communism is ruling our world, and why it has to, and this basically relates to people like, what has this got to do with me? I'm a million miles away from China. But as you've noticed, the cancel culture, does that ring a bell?
Oh,
the political correctness.
It's so incredibly. So, like, literally, we are rebranding this show. From Dudes and Beer because, admittedly, we do something totally different than we did at the beginning of this show. But it's also the fact of just because of beer in our title, we can't even run an ad on Facebook to get more people to come join the conversation. Because beer is in our title. It's been canceled. It's been outed. It's out.
I wonder why. I wonder when these people sold out and for how much did they sell their souls for the devil's control. I'm not sure.
By the
way, Chris, forgive me for cutting you off.
No.
Did you see Roger Waters the other day at a press conference?
Dude. Oh my God, that is so creepy. I was just about to Google that exact article about Roger Waters refusing a mega amount of money to use another brick in the wall for a Facebook ad.
And do you know that Mark Zuckerberg allegedly is the grandson of the Rockefeller, of David Rockefeller?
Oh man, stop. You say these things, but it's so entirely true and it's creepy. It's out there.
That's why
I'd love to say it's not. I'd love to say it's not a fact.
That's why I preface this as alleged, because I don't want to confirm it unless it's not true, but I have my suspicions.
Well, and I mean, just the fact that you even thought about that right as I was literally getting ready to look it up, like, that is creepy. I posted it like 3 times, and a lot of people ask me why I post things numerous times to our Dudes and Beer group. It's validity. That's why. Because you should always look for at least 3 sources, people. 3 sources. If you don't have 3 sources backing up a story of independent thought, you may want to rethink that dialogue that you're having in your head real quick about the facts of a situation. So, the fact that I have posted that 3 times over the last week, that Roger Waters has refused crazy money from Facebook, good on you for knowing that, man. So many people do not realize, like, I guess just like you said, that prophetic engine of synchronicity that goes on in the world, whether it be somebody like Roger tapping into that mentality years ago. You know, that what came to be popularized in the 90s by Living Color as that, quote, cult of personality, you know, that has been shared by so many people that it tends to drive our humanity at some point. It tends to literally bring us to a point of not only unity on some ends, but utter conflagration on others. And it becomes a wedge of control. And it's really interesting to see how that almost Occam's razor of logic is used as that wedge of control. And how even now with the disclosure community, that it's become that you hear the word UFO denier almost being used interchangeably with the word conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the dialogue that's going to be pushed if UFO denier is the dialogue that's being pushed?
Absolutely. It's great points. And that's why I'm grateful to be on your show, truly.
And I mean, even the same logic applies when it comes to Falun Gong, when it comes to people like the president saying, oh, those are cultural differences going on. I don't know. I guess back in the 40s, we didn't really, like, hey, 1930, what was it, 1938? That I had it up on screen earlier that Adolf Hitler was Time's Man of the Year.
It's unbelievable.
And like 2 years later, people were like, nah, no way. He's not shipping people via train to camps. You're a crazy person. He was the Man of the Year in Time.
Even my grandmother, who was Jewish at the time as well, God rest her soul, couldn't believe that the death camps were.
Yeah.
As I said to you, even the Supreme Court judge, Felix Frankfurter, couldn't believe that this is going on. It's so hard to believe, but it's going on.
Yeah.
And even when the evidence is presented, Chris, people will still not believe it. And I don't know what to say to these people. I think they should just remain silent, because if they're too lazy to read the evidence, too lazy to see what is going on, and you've got a lot of smart people, but if you do not discern from fact and fiction, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
There's a real problem. So thank you so much for letting me be on your show. Really.
Oh, hey, man, like I said, anytime and often. I want nothing more than to shine the light of day on issues like this, on the documentary Hard to Believe, which, hey, you may think it's hard to believe, folks. It didn't even take a shovel full of digging. Like we said last time you were on, this would be like what you would see on Curse of Oak Island, where they take like a trowel and go over the surface of the dirt and go, "Oh, wow, look at that." That's exactly. Literally how hard you have to dig to prove this is fact. And that's disturbing. It's not even a shovel full of evidence. It's not even like a bucket full of doctors that have been discredited.
Chris, you don't know how many people I've been banging on the doors to say, let me in, just for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for just a 5-minute segment. Countless hours, from the right to the left to moderates. I don't care who you are. And I listen to their shows day in and day out, talking all this about how they care so much and how they're so sympathetic. No, my friend, you are the real deal. Your show, your audience, I'm honored to be on, because you really walk the walk. These so-called humanitarians and so-called hosts and anchors, and from the left to the right, that I've been pleading with, I've sent promo after promo, fact after fact, evidence after evidence, and they've denied it. They've stayed silent, and that's what I think is so sad, is that this is not about a right or left issue, a Democrat or Republican issue. This is a human issue, for God's sake. And just because I was on Alex Jones or on Tucker Carlson, not yet, but I was on Alex Jones or your show or other people, does not mean that I can't come on your show and on Rachel Maddow or on NBC or Fox. Who cares? This is human beings we're dealing with. This is slaughtering of innocents. And for you to remain silent and not speak up and not have someone on, that has risked it all. I'm a nobody, Chris. I have no titles. I don't belong to any government organization or intelligence unit, or I haven't even got military service under my belt. But what I have is the heart to stand for what is good and what is right. And with a little bit of money that I have, or a time that I have, and is beating hard in my chest, I've done what I could, sacrificed everything, put everything on the line to help expose evil and to stand up for good. And that is it. Regardless of whether it's part of my family or it's got nothing to do with me, I think it's important to stand for what is right. And you've done the same thing, and that's why birds of a feather stick together. And quite honestly, I've been really disheartened and brokenhearted by the lack of support and the complicitness and just the silence that has come out of these mainstream media hosts and these podcasters that's every day sit up there and preach goodness and happiness and health and doing the right thing, but yet stay and remain silent. Yeah. And I'm not trying to disrespect anybody, okay? But this is, like you said, you don't have to dig up a lot of dirt to see this. It's on the surface now. Even Google is coming to the party. Not that they, I mean, even though they are complicit, you can still find it. Easy. Yeah.
Once again, it doesn't take an extreme amount of Google digging to find it.
Exactly.
Like I've found most of these things that you have seen pop up in real time tonight. In real time.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
so like literally as you mention these things, I went and searched them and found them.
I mean,
and there they are. You know, I mean, like straight up where the Siberian court orders Falun Gong movement banned. That's same concept. It's out there. Go ahead.
For 10 years, for 15 years, since 2006, this investigations have been going on. All the reports. That's why we had to have our own media. That's why the Epoch Times came into existence and New Tongue Dynasty Television came into existence because of the overwhelming letdowns and the abandonment of humanity against these issues. And that's why, you know, I would love to get on OAN. They haven't reported on it yet. I don't think they've reported on it. Fox did a little documentary, but man, I tell you, they know full well about it, and I haven't heard anybody, very few, mention it. That's why, Chris, I take my hat off to you. Yes, there are good journalists in you know, I'm not going to call. There are a lot of fake news media out there, but there are certain CNN reporters, there are certain Fox reporters, NBC reporters, Washington Times reporters, New York Times reporters, on the left and the right, that have had the courage to speak up against it. I will give them kudos. Sure. But for the majority of reporters and podcasters out there, come on, guys. Where's the courage and heart that you are exemplifying right now in real time with me having the platform as we are doing, going through all this? And you are quite remarkable, Mr. Chris.
Thank you.
You are quite remarkable. And God bless you and thank you.
Well, really? I mean, for me, it's the fact of at one point in life, I mean, I guess technically any order of disclosure I was under is up now. I've definitely admitted on this show that I am a former on-air producer for Alex Jones. Like, a lot of the reason I do this show the way I do it is because, like, hey, these are things that we should be talking about. Like, why is this ignored by the mainstream media? Why is it ignored even by people like Alex? Where, sure, they'll have you on, like you said, once, maybe twice. But are they following up? Are they actively keeping track of what's going on in the news and contacting you afterward and being like, hey, man, what's going on with this straight-up propaganda campaign about it just being a cultural difference? Like, that's horrifying. That's literally, like, I posted an article earlier today to our Dudes and Beer group about an IKEA in in Atlanta, Georgia, who on Juneteenth made their menu fried chicken and watermelon. Now, I don't care who you are or the fact that you're a Scandinavian furniture company. You are in Atlanta, Georgia. That may very well be seen as a racist menu. I'm just going to throw it out there, IKEA, or whatever manager or menu.
And you know, Chris, a lot of their where do you think a lot of their so-called Scandinavian furniture and all this stuff comes from? China.
So, it's one of those
if you say the China virus, you're racist. You're racist.
Well,
this is what these people live for nowadays.
Well, you do literally have to be willing to call out the fact that yes, there are human rights organization.org, humanrightswatch.org. China uses rule of law to justify Falun Gong crackdown. There we go again from Engadget talking about Facebook blocking users from sharing news links coming from Australia or the Southern Hemisphere. So, it was anybody trying to share this kind of truth that it was systematically shut down. And it's wild to see those kind of things, to see that, and to see it literally laid out in front of you. Yet still to ignore it. And to allow it to go on. And granted, I'm not going to say that any manufacturer isn't guilty of using plants in Huai, China, or what have you, for any kind of, or even Foxconn, which is known for its, quote, suicide nets. But, man, if you're an Apple user, wow, that is some horrifying stuff if you start following that rabbit hole. And the human rights violations of that company abroad and in Asian countries.
Oh, absolutely. And one more thing about Mitch McConnell, the House Majority Leader.
Yeah.
His wife, Elaine Chao, was the transportation director, right? Secretary of Transportation in America. Her father owns the largest shipping conglomerate in China. And guess who he's buddy with? Yeah, that's right, folks. Jiang Zemin. And who is Jiang Zemin? Oh, the former president of the Chinese Communist Party, who actually conducted and started the brutal forced organ harvesting genocide against the Falun Gong. That guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The Communist Health Organization, the Secretary General, Tedros. Oh, wasn't he a patsy for the CCP? What did he do? Oh, he covered up 3 cholera outbreaks in Ethiopia and took a large amount of money to conceal the bioweapon from China. Oh, that guy. Oh, and what about Wang Jiefu? You know who Wang Jiefu is? He sits on the board of the World Health Organization, which we call the Communist Health Organization, who was a liver transplant surgeon who oversaw the forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners and did actually a live organ harvesting surgery on a Falun Gong practitioner. And he was the vice president or the vice premier of the Ministry of Health in China, who now sits on the board of the World Health Organization, refuting the claims and debunking, trying to debunk and refuse all the evidence from the investigators. Oh, in the United Nations, aren't they supposed to be some kind of legitimate group that's supposed to help humanity? But why then are they allowing a murderous regime at slaughtering its own citizens in death camps, controlling 4 specialized units and almost the intellectual property unit of the United Nations? Imagine that, huh?
Yeah. Well, and like we were saying last time, within that video, to look at it and see the fact that they are by themselves almost in a UN chamber talking about that.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of people hanging out in the room where they are giving their active testimony to everybody else. And I've actually got that shot on screen right now. Oh, hold on. There it is. That is their testimony to the UN.
Sick.
That's horrifying. This is a U.S. congressional hearing from UN doctors sent to investigate what was going on in China with the Falun Gong and was anything happening. And yes, they came back and said, absolutely, we went to investigate a horrible rumor, and it is not a horrible rumor. This is fact. And that was exactly the number of people who gave it to be able to show up to that meeting and that testimony.
Well, tell that to China Joe and Hunter Biden.
So,
anyway, Chris, it's a pleasure.
Before we let you go, because, I mean, yes, absolutely. Pleasure, as always, Mitchell. And once again, at least twice, thrice a year, man, I want you on, at a minimum, talking about this, ringing this from mountaintops. Where can people go? I've got faluninfo.net up right now.
Yes.
Where else can people go to see videos? Where can we go to get videos, to embed them on our videos page so that people can know where to find them? One last moment for shameless self-promotion for the cause.
No, absolutely. EndTransplantAbuse.org as well, and StopOrganHarvesting.org, which is great as well. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And don't forget Hard to Believe, the documentary. And that's all she wrote, folks.
Once again, man, thank you so much. The information that you have to share is mind-numbing and soul-crushing as a human being, and to know that these kind of things still happen in our world. These kind of horrible negative vibrations are still vibrating like a gong around the world. And if they aren't, they should be. People like you should be bringing more light to this. There's a reason why I have decided to devote airtime from this show to this topic, because it's just beyond humanity to me to ignore it once I know about it. I can't not scream it from the mountaintops and, like you, just shoot flares from guns everywhere I go.
Absolutely. And you know, Chris, if you know any other podcasters that you are friends with would love to have you on, please let me know, and I'm more than ready and willing to go. And the more people, my mission is just the more people I can reach, the more people I can share and bring to light this issue about Falun Gong and the CCP, the better. And I do this for no money, no donations. I leave no name and I seek no reward. It's just because it's the right thing to do.
And I get no money from you or for it.
Yes,
Same thing.
It's only out of the kindness of the heart. That's what makes it so special. It's only from the kindness of the heart. It's true goodness. It's honor. It's virtue, and it's valor, and that is what's important. No amount of money, no amount of glory or fame or fortune can buy the heart. And the prerequisite for credibility is sincerity. And that's all she wrote, folks. So God bless you, Chris. And thank you very much, everybody, you know.
Absolutely. Please do hold the line while we close things out, if you can. Yes. While you are online, checking out all the great work by Mitchell Gerber, folks, make sure to stop on by the Dudes and Beer podcast. That is where you can download the app. That's where you can find all the episodes. That's where you can find everything. Make sure to check out CuriousRealm.com. That is what we will be transmogrifying into come December. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves, take care of each other.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer podcast.
If you can't be good, be good.
Listen to our audio streams or chat with us live.
download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.